So we're good to go? You can hear me? Good evening. Welcome to the Board of Selectmen's meeting for Monday, June 1st, 2020. We're going to begin by, we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance, and then I'll read the agenda and we'll go into the meeting itself. Mr. Chair, if you'd like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag
the United States of
America,
and to the republic which it stands, one
nation,
nation,
under
God,
indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, excellent. So tonight's meeting, we have a pretty full agenda, so I just wanted to inform the public in advance that we're going to be limiting public input with respect to some matters. This is a video meeting, as you know. If you wish to participate, please raise your hand. Use the raise your hand feature in the Zoom meeting to ask to speak. So tonight's agenda begins with organization, pledge of allegiance, and reading of the mail. It will be followed by department and board updates, employee recognition, Cares Act Authorization, a vote to file, an annual subsidized housing inventory and affordable unit report, staff updates, general discussion on COVID-19 if necessary. We will continue with discussion of the operational considerations for reopening town hall, and emergency staffing policy. Economic Development Committee, we have an appointment of a new member, Brendan Davis. We're going to move on then to public input, members updates. We have a schedule of annual reviews for the town administrator, the police chief, and fire chief, and an employment agreement renewals for deputy chief of police and deputy fire chief to be discussed as well. We have the town administrator reports, which includes an approval of an application for assistance to firefighters grant, approval for submission of municipal vulnerability grant. 9 Air Road, we have we need to schedule a soil removal hearing. 64 Spectacle Pond Road, soil removal permit update. Elder and Human Services Director hiring process update. Nagog Pond emergency beaver trapping permit application by the town of Concord. They're asking, we're looking to see whether the board will agree to authorize the town administrator to sign that agreement. A settlement agreement with the Littleton Professional Firefighters Association. And then an EHS department donation from Jesse Clicks Photography for $4,500. And from John and Eunice Morrison Charitable Foundation for $2,500. We'll be seeking an approval of the board to accept those donations. We're going to schedule the Board of Selectmen's meetings for the month of July. At 7:30, we do have a public hearing for the fiscal year 2021 transfer station fees. At 8 p.m., we have a joint meeting with the Park and Recreation Commission and Board of Health regarding Long Lake Beach. And then that will be followed pending approval of the beach permit by the Board of Health. That meeting will be followed by a joint meeting with the Park and Recreation Commission and Finance Committee to discuss fee structures and financing for beach operations at Long Lake Beach. Then there'll be a review of the minutes, and then the board will be leaving open session and we'll be entering into executive session around 9 p.m. Thank you. So I'd ask the town administrator at this time to go through the reading of the mail.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We received, well, first and foremost, Madam Chair, may I read the notice provided by the Light and Water Department regarding their PFAS forum?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. For the members watching at home, or for those of us joining us live or in the future for the recording, the Littleton Light and Water Department provided a notice to the Board of Selectmen, which they asked that be read at this evening's meeting. And the notice says, the Littleton Electric and Water Departments will hold a webinar on June 6th at 10 a.m. to update the public about its work to address PFAS, a containment that has been detected in a portion of the town's water, a contaminant that has been detected in a portion of the town's water supply. LELWD staff will explain PFAS, the status of LELWD's wells, the state's new PFAS regulations, and plans to mitigate the contaminant. A question and answer session will follow the presentation. To join the webinar, please visit the lelwd.com or watch live on Littleton Community Television government channels, Comcast Channel 9 and Verizon Channel 37. We hope the community will join the LELWD to hear the latest information about their work to continue to deliver safe and reliable water. Again, their website is lelwd.com for information relative to the meeting. Moving along, there was a item in the packet for the board with regard to a letter that was submitted by the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission relative to Eagle Creek Renewable Energy and improvements, permitting of improvements to the dam at the Pepperell Hydroelectric Power Station. Late this afternoon, we received another letter from the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission regarding a notice of intent to convey interest in project lands for National Grid, and a letter from Comcast regarding their Xfinity package information, indicating that certain subscriptions will no longer be available for new subscriptions, specifically Super Triple Play, Signature Triple Play, Select Triple Play, Standard Triple Play, Super Double Play, Signature Double Play, Select Double Play, and Standard Double Play.
And the wicked googly. Sorry.
Wonderful. Thank you, Ms. Nazarian. So we are on to item number 2, department and board updates. And we have a couple of employees that we wish to recognize at this time for their some notable achievements. I don't know, Ms. Nazarian, if you want to speak to this or if you prefer that I do.
I'm happy to defer to however you'd like to do it.
Okay, sure. So the first, well, I'll take the lead. The first employee I'd like to recognize is Assistant HR Admin Carol Hanlon. She recently completed the MMA Suffolk University Certificate in Local Government Leadership and Management course. This is a course that we're fortunate to host right here in Littleton on behalf of the MMA, and it's nice to see our employees taking advantage of the location and also wanting to advance themselves personally and professionally by participating in this course. It is not an easy course. So I just wanted to recognize Carol and congratulate her on this notable achievement.
Very much.
Oh, there you are. Hi there.
Hi. And I just wanted to extend my thanks to the board for giving me the opportunity to participate in the program. It's a wonderful training program. I can't recommend it enough, and I am so glad that I participated. Thank you for your support in that.
You're very welcome. Are there any other comments from the board?
Just thank you for your dedication and for taking the time to be part of that course and making yourself a better employee for the town. Not that we thought that was possible, Carol, but
no, it was the time put out and the effort that was required was well worth it.
great. Thank you. And congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Any other board members? No? Okay. Thank you. Congratulations again, Carol. The other employee I wanted to recognize, this pertains to the Cares Act funding that we've been, which is being provided by the state, where we've been seeking all possible reimbursement eligibility. from the state due to COVID-19. And I just wanted to recognize an employee who's been working very hard on that initiative. And Nina, I don't know if you had anything more to add to that. I think you might know a little bit more about that than I do.
Well, admittedly, it's actually Cheryl Herrick-Steller, our finance director, who's been working most closely with Kim Cuvio, and if I'm pronouncing her last name correctly, and I know Cheryl is joining us right now, and so I would, through you, Madam Chair, I would defer to her.
Perfect.
Thank you. Yes, Kim has been instrumental in really helping to kind of pull all the information related to this reimbursement as well as the FEMA reimbursement. She spent lots of hours on webinars and interacting with all of our department heads. This is a very different FEMA than a single snowstorm, and it's fairly complex, and it's complex with how the FEMA and the Cares funding interacts. And I couldn't be more pleased and happy with the work that she's doing. She's been extremely supportive of me, and the product that she's producing has been excellent.
That's wonderful. And thank you, Cheryl, for bringing that to my attention and to the board's attention. I think it's important to recognize our employees at all levels, at all times. But the fact that she's taken on this important initiative it's nice to know, and we're very grateful for her hard work on this. So thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Cheryl.
Okay, so we are now on to the Cares Act authorization. Do we have a motion with that, Nina?
Yes, we do. After all the documentation and hours and lots of work that was put together by Cheryl, Kim, and others, there is a motion here for submitting for reimbursement in the amount of $102,000 roughly dollars.
That's excellent. Does any members of the board have any comments or questions?
Nope.
Nothing from me.
Okay. Can I have a motion then, please?
I move the Board of Selectmen vote to submit for reimbursement of $102,348 for incurred and estimated fiscal year 20 expenses related to COVID-19 under the Cares Act.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, this is a roll call vote. Mr. Glavy,
Aye.
Mr. Knox,
Aye.
Mr. DeCoste,
Aye.
Mr. Gerbig,
Aye.
and Ms. Napoli is aye. So the motion is approved as written. Thank you very much. And thank you again for everyone involved with seeking that reimbursement on behalf of the town. The next agenda item I had requested, it's the annual subsidized housing inventory and affordable unit report. This is something that Maren has been working she's been excellent working on this initiative on behalf of the town for many years now. I don't know if Maren's on the call, Nina or Joe, or not.
Sure. I don't see her.
Okay, that's fine. This is actually a matter that's going to come before the board. We have been, there's a renewal contract that Maren has asked us to consider for the services provided to monitor our subsidized housing inventory. There's also, it's also important for the Affordable Housing Trust to have the access to these additional resources with, questions or concerns or initiatives that we might like to implement. So Maren's going to bring that back to us at the end of the month. The contract does need to be signed at the end of the month. So it's just, I just wanted to put it on your radar now, but we'll get a more in-depth proposal and overview of that contract and those services when we meet again at the end of the month. So there's no need for any discussion or motion at this time. The next agenda item is staff updates on COVID-19. Nina, are there any staff members present who would like to give us an update?
I know that the police chief is on the line. I believe that the fire chief is getting back from some logistical work for the Groton fire, which the board is aware of.
Mutual aid.
Yes, but I don't know if the police chief has anything he would like to update the board on at this point.
Chief Pinard, are you there?
I am, sorry.
That's okay.
Technical difficulties and trying to watch two meetings here at the same time. I apologize. There's really no updates from the police department at this time to give. I apologize.
No, you don't need to apologize.
Yeah.
No, not
Like I said,
necessary.
I gave you guys a bunch of emails this afternoon. I apologize for bombarding you with those, first of all. But like I said, I'm on a couple different meetings now. And again, you know where I'm coming from in regards to our staffing.
Okay. All right, excellent. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
You're welcome.
Stay safe.
That was the shortest.
Okay, so the next agenda item is continued discussions.
Madam Chair, sorry.
Oh,
I
sorry,
know
go ahead.
that no problem. I know that you had asked for some discussion. I don't know if you want to take it up now or perhaps later, but on this item, we have information relative to the payouts for emergency responders and furloughed employees.
Correct. Yeah, so as the board will recall, we had voted to institute certain payouts to employees due to the pandemic. I believe in the packet there is a memo to the town administrator from Ann Essman, just giving a summary of those payouts currently. And at this time, we had sort of not set a date certain when those payouts would end. And so I just wanted to bring it to the board's attention to see if they wanted to make any revisions or updates to the timetable, the amount of time that we want to continue those payouts given the governor's recent rephasing schedule. Does the board have any comments on that at this time?
Judging by what the governor has said, would this be the proper time to stop making these payments?
I would recommend, if we're going to do it at the end of the next pay cycle. So this pay cycle would be inclusive of the first responder assistance, or whatever we want to call it, and then the next pay cycle. If we were not coming with a date certain, I would recommend that we leave it in place for this pay cycle, wherever it ends. I don't know when it ends, but and then moving forward, plan to stop it then.
I think that makes sense, Chuck, especially because roughly it seems like it'll line up with when we hit phase 2 as a state, plus or minus. May not be on the nose, but and that seems like a reasonable demarcation point for us.
I agree.
Okay.
Need a motion to that effect?
Do we have a motion for that, Nina?
We don't, but I could craft one very quickly. Move that something to the effect of that the board vote to
Continue bonus payment
thank you
to the police and fire first responders through the end of the current pay period and terminate henceforth without further vote of the board.
Second.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor? Mr. Glavy?
Aye.
Mr. Gerbig?
Aye.
Mr. Knox?
Aye.
Mr. DeCoste?
Aye.
Cindy Napoli is aye. Great. Thank you, Nina. Thanks for that reminder.
Sure.
And
Thank you to all the first responders and all the employees who have put forth for us. Appreciate it.
okay, so And Nina, there was no discussions about the reopening of town hall. Any update on that?
We do have an update on that. I understand that the team met today, late this afternoon, and discussed the reopening next steps. They're working through a control plan that is required by the state, and the control plan would address protocols for the major areas of distancing, signage, face covering, hygiene, supplies, staffing and operations, training, wellness, and return to work plans, cleaning and disinfection, maintenance logs, instructions in common areas. The next steps will be to have a draft implementation plan for the board to be able to view and provide comment on, and it will contain a summary by department of steps taken to improve safety, steps still needed, supplies or equipment needed, estimated date of office readiness for employees to return, employee training completed, sign off by department head, acknowledgement, and the next meeting that is scheduled is Monday, June 8th, to review the first draft of the plan.
Okay, great. That sounds great. Thank you to everyone involved for their hard work on that. It's an important initiative, and clearly something that is important to lots to consider in the reopening plan. So I appreciate everybody's time and effort in that initiative. The next agenda item is, I believe Mr. DeCoste requested this on the agenda. We have an appointment to a new member of the Economic Development Committee.
That's correct, Madam Chair. I had requested that we have a candidate who has attended the last, 5 or 6 meetings as a non-voting member. He's added a lot to the dynamic of the group. Right now, out of the 7-member Economic Development Committee, we've only got 4 members. And if we don't have all 4 able to attend, we don't have a quorum, so we can't have a meeting. Mr. Davis is a business owner. He is very involved with the Marlborough Chamber of Commerce and Economic Development programs that go on in Marlborough. That's where his business is located. And he's come to us with, like I said, a number of great ideas, and it's nice to have some new perspective, and there's someone who's looking at things differently than we might be looking at it. And so I asked that this be put on there. I know that we've got kind of a schedule towards the end of June, but we've had these vacancies for so long that I felt like it was kind of a rolling application process. And I'd appreciate if the board would support Mr. Davis. The other 3 members, myself, endorsed Mr. Davis as unanimously as a new member for the Economic Development Committee. And I just asked that the board do the same and help us to kind of get moving. And we are still recruiting. So anybody that's looking to help us to work towards developing small businesses, large businesses, and doing all that the Economic Development Committee does in town, please come forward and submit an application. You can find it on the town's website. Great.
Well, certainly appreciate him coming forward and wanting to be involved in the Economic Development Committee, especially if he's been regularly attending meetings without having yet been appointed to the committee. That sends a lot. And it's certainly one of the more important committees that we have in the town of Littleton. So I certainly appreciate him wanting to participate. And like you said, a fresh set of eyes is certainly helpful as well. So does he happen to be on the call, Mr.
I kind of dropped the ball on sending an invitation. Nina did cover for me and send an invitation out later this afternoon. So I'm not sure if he was able to dial in or not. I don't know if Joe or Nina can tell if he was able to make it. That's on me if he's not here. In my haste to get it on the agenda, I wasn't.
No worries. It's fine. So
happy to appoint him, but I wonder if he could tell us a little bit more about his background. Is there a cover letter or something? I didn't see it.
Nina, do you have a copy of his application?
I may. I mean, perhaps he submitted in the regular process. I don't know.
He did submit. He
Okay.
did submit. I don't know. I think it went through Diane's office.
Let me quickly take a look at our folder for that meeting and perhaps I can pull it up.
But he's in the personnel placement business, has been for his professional career. Lived in Littleton with he's got 2 young boys, puppy, lovely wife, and they're active in the community with, starting to get into youth sports and that kind of thing. So it's a nice dynamic. Like we were lucky to have the young fella sitting on the Board of Selectmen for the past 3 years. Different perspective with the young family. And,
Happy to support him. I'd just like to meet him at some point.
absolutely, and I can certainly arrange that. I just, like I said, I kind of dropped the ball, Paul, and didn't extend the invitation for him to be on the Zoom.
Yep.
I'd rather you guys meet him in person. He's a dynamic guy, and he's
I'm
got
all
a lot
for
of really
appointing
good
him tonight and inviting him to come to whatever future meeting he wants. He can just say hello,
I would appreciate that.
That sounds great. Okay, so can we have a motion then to appoint Mr. Davis?
So moved.
Second?
Any further discussion?
Would that be for an indefinite term, perhaps?
Certainly. That's that. I didn't hear me say that. I whispered it. Sorry. Very soft spoken.
Okay, so all those in favor, Mr. Glavy,
Aye.
Mr. Knox?
Aye.
Mr. DeCoste?
Aye.
Mr. Gerbig?
Aye.
And Cindy Napoli is aye. Thank you. And we'll look forward to meeting him at our next meeting. We'll arrange for him, Mr. Davis, to come in and just appear before the board so we can get to see him and learn a little bit more about his background. I have been informed that Mr. Chief Wodzinski is on the call. I'd like to invite him in to
Just
see if he had.
As he's transitioning in, I'll take care of getting a hold of Mr. Davis and letting him know he has to go get sworn in with the clerk and do the ethics training and all that stuff. So I'll take care of that portion of the onboarding and orientation.
Excellent. Thank you.
Mhm.
How we doing?
Good. How are you?
Chief, how are you?
Not bad. Just got back from Groton. Sorry, a little bit late.
That's okay. How are things? Everybody safe and
Yep, everything is good.
okay.
Everyone's back.
All right. Good. Glad to hear
Everything's in a good place.
Okay.
COVID related for town mod. Things are pretty status quo. We're still dealing with our incidents as they come along. There are still some coming on the list, some going off the list as we go through town. There are a couple of the different facilities in town that still do have the sickness running through, and obviously we deal with that as it comes along. So right now we're trying to just build our supply backup of PPE. So that we're in a comfortable place, and just on the in case that there's a second wave or anything like that. It's just still just dealing with some of the equipment that's a little bit back ordered and stuff like that. But other than that, knock on wood, everybody here is healthy.
Good. Glad to hear it.
Madam Chair, can I just jump in real quick for a question?
Absolutely.
Chief, if for PPE, what would you say is it masks? Is it gloves? Is there anything in particular that you feel like you're under inventoried on?
All of the above right now. We're just looking to, we're comfortable. I'm not, we're not in a bad place, but we want to be able to be prepared if things do change again. So we're looking for we'll be getting masks, Tyvek suits, the booties, face shields, gloves, the full complement of all of the basic PPE for dealing with this,
as well as the isopropyl alcohol and hand sanitizer,
exactly,
and wipes and that kind of thing as well. Okay, so I would just extend to anybody that is listening or anybody that does listen, and maybe through the town administrator's office, we can put something on the website that says, hey, if you or your company are able to donate, I know that what the ask has been put out there, and I know that you've been the beneficiary of some very generous donations. But let's just let people know that it's not over, and that we do need to replenish. So I'd ask that people, ask friends, and it's like the old Fabergé shampoo commercials. You tell two friends, and they tell two friends. So
we've had some very generous companies, individuals in town that have come forward with Tyvek suits. Alcohol-based hand sanitizer, disinfectant cleaners, a variety of companies have really stepped up to the plate. Like I said, and residents and it's been very much appreciaed.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, if that continues long, it'd be great.
Yeah, let's just continue that message.
Chuck, you recommend a particular shampoo, do you?
Well, it's mostly Head and Shoulders. That's all you can see. That's all you can see on a Zoom is Head and Shoulders. That's all I do. I wash from here up. And it covers the beard nicely. Thank you, Paul.
Great. Thank you very much, Chief. Appreciate the update.
Thank you, Chief. Godspeed to you folks.
Thank you.
Okay, so next on the agenda is public input and members' updates. Do we have any anyone raising their hand, Joe?
Not currently.
Okay. Member updates, we'll start with Mr. Knox.
I have nothing at this point. Thank you.
Mr. DeCoste.
I just put out there the work of Anne-Marie Krause and a number of other folks. I don't want to leave anybody's name out, so I'm not going to name any names beyond Anne-Marie Krause, but the senior pictures that are on the common look fantastic, gotten a lot of comments and compliments, and that also Donnellan's donating a couple of Mylar flags. So as you drive around town, you see a yellow flag or a gold balloon, Mylar balloon with the paw on it. Donlands has been generous and donated those. So anybody that has a senior at the high school, I believe any senior at any high school that is a Littleton resident, they can go and pick up a couple of balloons at the customer service desk at Donlands and fly those balloons with pride at their mailbox. And just thank you to Donlands. Thank you to all the folks that are stepping up and trying to make kind of a lousy situation for some graduating college and high school kids. There's a lot of people that are stepping up and trying to make it special for them. And although it's different, recognizing those students for an accomplishment.
That's great. Mr. Glavy.
Yeah, I'd also like to recognize the folks that made our virtual Memorial Day a great success, with the limitations that we were operating under. And I'd start, of course, with our veterans agent, John Borowski, who saw to it that all the veterans were acknowledged. Those newly buried within the past year, their names were read, and everyone else got their flags. Our chair gave some very thoughtful remarks, and we thank you for that. T.C. Bailey, as usual, had the cemetery looking terrific. And Mark Query, especially, for putting everything together so that residents who wanted to commemorate had a chance to do so via their computer or on cable, and made for a nice Memorial Day ceremony.
It was very
Amen.
nice.
Agreed.
So I'm going to intercede at this point. I just wanted to acknowledge that this is Mr. Gerbig's last Board of Selectmen's meeting. I
A
believe.
scheduled one anyway, right?
Scheduled one, right?
Amen.
So right, exactly. I just wanted to acknowledge Chase at this time and thank him for serving with us for the past 3 years. He's certainly been an
3
asset
years and
to
2
the
months.
board. How many days? How many hours?
Overachiever.
He's certainly been an asset and brought a lot of insight to the board. One thing that I do like about our board is that we're 5 very different individuals, and I think each one of us brings something very unique to the board, and And Chase certainly contributed very much so, and he will certainly be missed.
And
So
I'm hoping we won't lose him entirely in some of his subcommittee work that doesn't go away just because he's going away.
Right.
No,
Yeah,
I'm at your disposal as needed,
Oh,
indefinitely.
shouldn't have said that.
it's on tape.
Judy, mark that.
Thank you, Cindy.
You're very welcome.
Thank you, Chase.
Thanks, Chase.
Thank you, Chase.
And I also just wanted to work off of Mr. Glavy's comments about John Borowski. We actually did receive a very nice note in the mail from a veteran who wanted to let us know that Mr. Borowski was very helpful to him and provided him with some guidance and got him connected with some much needed services that he was having difficulty obtaining. So again, I just wanted to acknowledge Mr. Borowski. He's our veteran service officer. If any of you are not familiar with Mr. Borowski, he's worked very hard for the community, our veteran community, for many years. And it was nice to see that note in the mail acknowledging his hard work and dedication to our veterans. And
We're lucky to have him.
absolutely. So I'm going to ask you now, Chase, if you have any updates or anything you'd like to share.
No updates tonight. Thank you.
Excellent. And Joe, is there any public input or is there still none? No.
No hands are currently raised.
Okay, perfect. So we will move on to agenda item number 4. It is the scheduling of the annual reviews for the town administrator, the police chief, and fire chief, and we also have an employment agreement renewals for the deputy police chief and deputy fire chief. So it seems like these always come upon us unexpectedly, or I just feel like we're always scheduling these reviews, which is fine. But I just think it's important that we get them scheduled and that we get them done in a timely fashion. So I wanted to, especially the town administrators review, we need to, it's time to schedule that. So I just wanted to bring these to the attention of the board, see if the board had any questions or thoughts on how we should move forward on this. I know I have some suggestions, but I'd like to hear from the board first.
The only thing I'd say, and this isn't, I have no preference for where the chair chooses to put us, but reading the proposed motions, it had been our practice to always have 2 members do each of the reviews with input from the other members before and after. But if I read this, it kind of implies that there would be 1 member doing a review. I don't know what your intention was, Madam Chair, but.
Right, so we've gone back and forth with this as a board as far as forming a subcommittee if we have 2 members appointed. It was town council recommended naming 1 member to be for the board to appoint 1 member. That appointed member can then invite another member to come in and participate in the process with them. But as far as the formal motion goes, it was a recommendation of town council that the board only appoint 1 member.
Okay, as long as we get to the same place. Fine.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. So,
I'll just jump in. I think, Cindy, where you've served as the vice chair and are currently the sitting chair, that the responsibility of town administrator should lie with you.
okay.
I don't know if anybody
Thank
has
you.
other input on that.
Yeah.
I agree.
Okay. Okay, and then I appreciate that, Mr. DeCoste, and certainly happy to do that. With respect to the police chief, is there a member that would like to work on that?
I'll jump in on the police. I did. I worked with Chase on the fire department on the fire chief last year. So just to kind of change it up a little bit. I still actually owe some documentation to Chief Wodzinski. Chase and I maybe we can get together and
Yeah, maybe I ought to do that before I
finalize.
ride off into sunset.
No, it's a team effort. But sorry to call you out when you're taking a bite. My bad.
Okay, and then so
But I mean,
then,
if someone else wants to do it and invite me in, that's fine. But I just, just to kind of change it up, I think it's just as good for the staff as it is for, or for the employees as it is for us to
Right.
get a different perspective.
right,
And with the remaining one, the fire chief, I believe I was involved with Scott a few years ago. So Joe, maybe perhaps would you mind doing that one? Then I'll join in on whoever one of you wants to invite me on board. But
I'll go with wherever the board wants me to go.
perfect. All right, great.
So we've got Cindy with the TA, Chuck with PD, and Joe with FD, and then we can invite in for input.
Right,
Others?
right.
Okay.
And we can just say that we'll perform the annual review before June 30th. Does that leave enough time, or should we put it out further than that?
I think we
Given
can put it
that
on that date. Put it on that date, and then if we need to extend it, we can.
Okay,
At least we have a time certain. I think we all work better with a deadline.
okay,
My opinion.
I agree. Okay, so can we have a motion?
okay, I'll move that the board vote to appoint Cindy Napoli to perform the annual review of the town administrator, Chuck DeCoste to perform the annual review of the police chief, and Joseph Knox to perform the annual review of the fire chief by or before June 30th, 2020.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor, Mr. Glavy?
Told you wanted to get it to the stats first. I mean, that's an aye.
Mr. Knox?
Aye.
Mr. DeCoste?
Aye.
Mr. Gerbig?
Aye.
And Cindy Napoli is aye. Perfect. Thank you very much. So the second matter under agenda item number 4 is we have an employment agreement renewal for the deputy police chief and deputy fire chief. Nina, can you walk me through this?
Sure, absolutely. The deputies both have annual employment agreements. And so at this time, it would be recommended that the board appoint a member or however the board wishes to do it, but using the same fashion that was just discussed, appoint one member to prepare the draft renewal of the appointment agreement with both the deputy police chief and the deputy fire chief. Certainly in the same way, the board could bring in a second member. If the board member selected could bring in a second member, if so desired. Chuck, you're muted.
I was asking for you to read my lips.
Oh, I can't do that very well, but I'll try.
I was just going to add or offer that this is an employment agreement. It's not a whole lot is going to change. And I believe that the performance appraisal is done by the respective chiefs. So I'm happy to be responsible for either or both. If I'm working on Chief Bernard's performance review, I can take responsibility for Chief Patterson's, and if the board wishes for me to take care of both of them, I will. But I'll just offer that up, that it's not necessarily a performance review. It's, I don't want to call it a rubber stamp. There is some opportunity for some changes and things like that with the employment agreement, but I think that it's less heavy lifting because they do in fact report to the respective chiefs. So I guess I'm offering myself up for either the deputy police chief or both.
Okay.
Yeah, given that it's mostly just making sure it happens at this point, and if Chuck's already doing one of those too, then I would be all for him being responsible for gathering the paperwork.
Thanks, Paul.
You did volunteer.
That's what I heard.
Yeah, it's fine.
Are there any other comments from the board? Okay, so can we have a motion, please?
Okay, move that the board vote to appoint Chuck DeCoste to prepare a draft renewal of the employment agreement with Deputy Police Chief Patterson and Deputy Fire Chief Clancy by or before June 30th, 2020.
Second.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, Mr. Gerbig,
Aye.
Mr. Glavy,
Aye.
Mr. DeCoste,
Aye.
Mr. Knox,
All right.
and Cindy Napoli is aye. Perfect. Thank you, Chuck, for volunteering to assist with that.
No problem.
So we are on to the town administrator updates. And Nina, on this, I didn't know. Well, I guess with the exception of item D, if there was just more of a streamlined approach, instead of us taking individual motions, if we could maybe just review what's on the list here and then maybe just do one motion.
I could probably do that for A and B.
Okay.
I think between you and I, we're gonna recommend to the board that we actually move C to the end of the agenda and
Right.
discuss it after executive session, which would actually cause us to amend the draft motion. I'm not, off the top of my head, I'm not entirely sure how it's worded, but you may need to amend that to come back into open session.
Okay.
So we could certainly do that for A and B.
Okay.
For A, I would actually defer to the fire chief, and for B, I would defer to our assistant town administrator.
Perfect. Chief Wodzinski still with us?
Yep, I'm here.
Excellent.
All right. So on the 15th, we had applied for the AFG, the Assistance to Firefighters Grant Program, COVID. So the AFG usually comes out every year for different amounts. This was a smaller one. It was the AFG supplemental. This was the one that we could benefit the most by if we're lucky enough to get it. This basically is replenishing all of our stock for any COVID-related supplies. We put in for $10,892. Our share of that is $518, which would be covered from within our budget, within our expense lines. So it wouldn't be any additional ask. It's a very rapid grant. This grant will be, I believe they're supposed to start making the awards at the end of this week, and the last award will be on June 25th. So it's just it was a very, very fast pace, short window on this one. And like I said, it's all all funded from within. So we don't need the additional, and it ultimately would replenish our COVID supplies if we got a grant.
Okay, great. Any questions from the board? Excellent. Thank you very much, Chief, for pursuing that. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
We gotta combine the two, or you want
Right.
a motion now? Want to just knock it out?
Yep.
Move the board vote to approve the application for assistance to the firefighter grant.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor, Mr. Knox,
All right.
Mr. DeCoste,
Aye.
Mr. Gerbig,
Aye.
Mr. Glavy.
Paul may have stepped off to be.
I'm about to, yeah.
Okay, all right. And Cindy Napoli is aye. Great. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief. There is a list in the packet that has a list of the PPEs that you and I were talking about earlier, Scott. So if anybody is looking at the packet and they're trying to figure out what they can donate, there you go.
Thanks.
Thank you.
And then that was item number A. Item number B.
That would be me, Cindy.
Okay.
Well, me and Paul, I guess, although it sounds like he's stepping up. This is the MVP grant for 119 to Hadawan. There are three things that I want to run by the board. The first and most important is that the grant is due on June 11th, and the town needs to sign that. So I think Joe Layden had circulated a draft version of the MVP grant for folks to take a look at, but we need to come up with some mechanism for the board to either get back together to agree to sign the grant or to authorize someone from the board, either Cindy is, well, probably not Cindy as the chair, but because she has to recuse herself, but someone from the board to sign the grant or authorize Nina or Joe to sign the grant on our behalf as part of the submission so it can go in on June 11th. So that's item number one. I think the cleanest way to do it is to probably all agree on what the general framework is, and as long as the framework of the grant fits what we've discussed, because we've discussed it several times now, then we can have someone sign it and submit it. I don't care if that's Nina or Joe or a member of the board, but I do think it makes sense to have a member of the board essentially bless the grant application as consistent with our discussions. So that's item number one. Item number two is the reason this is important is because the grant comes with a certain obligation on the town's part to match a certain amount of the funding. And we've talked about the minimum funding match is 25%. We've used roughly $1 million for this property. We think the grant will be much more competitive if we match not a ton more, but more than that 40% or more than that 25%, something probably in the 40% range would make us really, really competitive. But we have to actually certify that the town has the funds to do that. I thought we were going to be able to submit it and say that the CPC, we would seek out CPC funds if we were to get the grant, but I've come to understand that it needs to be the opposite way. So the other element, that is, CPC would need to essentially say right now, yes, we would be willing to support this. So with the board's permission, what I would like to do is ask CPC to have a meeting probably at the end of this week to consider a funding request on the order of $300,000 to $400,000 to support the acquisition of the Brown property. That would be contingent upon us getting the MVP grant. In other words, they wouldn't be committing to buy it outright, but if we got the MVP grant, they would be saying, yes, we CPC would kick in the additional money. It's a little easier for them because the Conservation Commission is also potentially voting tonight to support a $100,000 contribution from the Oak Hill Cell Tower Fund. So anyway, it's all a little bit squishy right now, but we would be asking CPC to contribute several $100,000 to this acquisition. If CPC were unwilling to do that, we wouldn't be able to submit the grant. And it's very much their prerogative. I think it's worth making that argument to them, but it is their prerogative to go forward. The qualifier here is that it would all be conditional upon us receiving the grant before we did that. So item number one was timing and signing. Item number two was funding. Oh, and item number three, Paul and I have essentially come up with what we think is a good solution for the existing house. We actually have solicited some quotes to just demolish the house. You recall the existing house on Tehadawon, as well as the sellers have obtained some quotes to demolish the house. And depending on if there's asbestos or not, our demolition quotes run somewhere between $10,000 to $12,000 on the low end and $25,000 on the top end. And the grant would help us pay for that. And according to Amy Green, as well as Sudbury Valley trustees, and removing that house would make this a much more competitive grant. So essentially what I'm suggesting is that we solve the existing house problem by incorporating into the grant the demolition of the house, that the grant would pay let's say 60% of the cost of. So the town would be picking up, another, let's say $10,000 worth of liability at the top end to demolish that house. But that could be the location in which we do the housing instead of lot A. We would have some flexibility in that regard, I think. So I think it makes sense to continue down that path, but I didn't want to tell Amy to write that into the grant without the board having an opportunity to contemplate the demolition of the house versus carving off that lot and selling it. So those are the three pieces. I know I kind of threw it all at you kind of quickly. What kind of questions do you guys have on it?
Why is the grant more competitive without the house?
Two reasons. One is more contiguous open space, but also that piece of property, the MVP grant is specifically intended for its ultimate purpose is climate resiliency and flood mitigation. And so by acquiring that lot rather than having it developed, right? Our original plan was to carve it off and just let the sellers sell that separately. It further improves the sort of flood mitigation capacity of the land.
Because there'll only be one house on it instead of two.
Exactly. And where that house is located, that's right at the tip of Long Lake. So even if one house lot is more valuable than another from those ecological perspectives, it would be the lot where the existing house is. So it makes it a better grant application for a relatively small amount of money.
Is Paul on the call or no, he stepped off?
He's on the Board of Health call.
Okay.
Oh, cool. This is something, I'll put words in Paul's mouth here. This is something that he and I put together collectively as a solution to dealing with that house. And he, I think, is very supportive of it.
Okay.
So in the event that CPC doesn't either get it approved, or where are we at with moving forward? It's all
if CPC didn't, then we wouldn't be able to submit the grant because we've got to submit essentially the grant application says that the funds are available for the matching portion. And unless CPC agrees that they're willing to commit some of their money to do it, the funds wouldn't be available. So we wouldn't submit the grant.
So we're not looking to have funds from the general fund to.
No.
It's still the same plan with cell tower money, CPC money.
Yep.
Monies that have already been earmarked or committed to open space or this type of purchase.
And what it wouldn't do is commit CPC to how they expended those funds. So they wouldn't necessarily have to spend them out of their existing stockpile of cash. Mm-hmm. They could either spend them that way or they could bond against it. We would still have that flexibility.
Sure.
It would simply be CPC, if they chose to, committing to expend that amount so that we could access the grant.
Okay. Thank you.
And I would propose to them that, and I'm sure they would welcome this, that any motion that they made would be contingent upon receiving the grant.
Right.
I think there are still options down the road if we didn't, even doing it purely within CPC. But frankly, there's no reason to have those discussions right now because our understanding is we'll informally know the grant status theoretically by the end of August, but probably more likely September given the other things going on right now. In other words, we would be well set up for fall town meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Jason, so you're seeking approval. You want the board to designate someone to sign the grant application?
I think what we should do is designate the town administrator as someone that the board is, we should designate the town administrator to sign the application once it's been approved by a member of the board and is, in that member's opinion, consistent with what we've discussed as a board.
So I recommend Paul.
I think that makes sense.
Yep.
And I'll keep you informed of how things, I haven't requested a meeting of the CPC yet, because I wanted everyone's buy-in before I did that, but this evening or tomorrow morning, I will make that request.
So perhaps the motion is amended to move that the board vote to approve the submission for the municipal vulnerability grant, subject to final form to be approved by Selectman Glavy, and authorize the town administrator to sign and submit said grant.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. Roll call vote. Mr. Knox?
Aye.
Mr. Gerbig?
Aye.
Mr. DeCoste?
Aye.
Mr. Glavy is not on the call, and I am going to abstain from the vote. So the motion is approved as dictated by the town administrator. Chase, thank you very much for working on this this important initiative. It'd be great to see this materialize and save that parcel of land.
It would be good. And as you've seen, we're also requesting some other, via correspondence, some information from the sellers. And, there's lots of administrative things going on. But what's particularly important here is that Amy Green is doing a lot of the heavy lifting to support this grant application, which could be worth $500,000 or more to the town here. So,
great.
And Joe has been amazing in supporting her and doing that. So we have a good team working on it.
That's excellent. Thank you. So with regard to, Nina, what did you say? We're going to move agenda item number C?
Yes, to the very end of the agenda and after executive session. So we would enter into executive session only to return to set the hearing for the 9 Ayer Road soil removal matter.
Okay.
Subject to the board's agreement on that procedure.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you. So agenda item letter D is 64 Spectacle Pond Road, a soil removal permit update. Mr. Layton, are you leading that?
Yes. Yes, Madam Chair. Wanted to provide the board with an update, especially since it's a topic that got a lot of attention from abutters, residents along Spectacle Pond, as well as a lot of time that was occupied by the board. Following the approval of the decision, due to some weather that delayed the start of the berm work that was called for and plans that the board approved. Work started midweek last week on some of the grading work. On Thursday, I drove by, observed equipment out there. I had the building commissioner stop by today to make an observation. He noticed that there wasn't any equipment out there today. I followed up with the contractor and scheduled a site visit with the contractor as well as Ed Mullen for Thursday afternoon to gain more information as far as what is going on with the project, the source of the delay, and in order to review the work that has been done to at least see what is being done, make sure that it is in compliance with the plan, and to make sure that forward progress is being made. I'd probably just tentatively say if we do have another meeting before the June 29th, that we schedule this as well for a further update, depending on how that site walk goes.
So have you seen any progress?
Yes. When I drove by at the end of the day on Thursday, the form of the berm was starting to be done. So if you may recall from the plans, essentially it was almost a horseshoe berm that was called. The dimensions were essentially 4 feet high. It was not 4 feet high. And in the site visit that Ed made today, he took pictures, and I'd guess that it's really only about 2 feet high as currently. So that's the purpose of the meeting out at the site, is to not only inspect what's been done, but then also to get more information on when this project is going to be done. This should not be a complicated project. And the time that it's taken to get just to this point, really, I don't understand. More progress should have been made by this point. I think everyone would agree on that. And that's why I contacted requesting a meeting at the site.
And the Mr. Green made statements to that end, and it's not going to take long to do. We can have it done by the end of April. So
Exactly.
it's kind of frustrating to know that it's still not done.
Right. I agree. I think this came to our attention, was it November originally?
It was.
It's crazy. Well, I appreciate you staying on top of this, Mr. Layton, on behalf of the board. It's certainly something that we're looking forward to seeing resolved. Hopefully the owner will get on board and start to fulfill some of the representations that have been made to the board. So appreciate it. Are there any other comments? No. Okay, so Elder and Human Services Director hiring process update.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have been interviewing candidates and hope to have a recommendation to the Council on Aging Board for at least 2 candidates as provided in the Memorandum of Understanding by the end of the week this week. Those candidates would be brought to the COA for an interview at a date to be scheduled, and then the COA, again, pursuant to the Memorandum of Understanding, would make a recommendation to me, and assuming all things are lining up, which I'd be surprised if things didn't, not knowing what the outcome's going to be at this point, then we would schedule an opportunity for the individual to come before the board for confirmation.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Nina, you've mentioned we have been interviewing candidates. Who is we?
Thank you. The Memorandum of Understanding calls for, as I'm sure you know, but for the public, 3 members of the Council on Aging and the Assistant Town Administrator and the Town Administrator. And the 3 members of the Council on Aging include Marge Payne, Patty Hunt, and Susan Melander.
Thank you.
Right. Any other further questions or comments on that agenda item? Okay, so it was H. I was just looking. I knew we had a discussion about a donation, but that's agenda item number H, letter H. So right now we're moving on to Nagog Pond Emergency Beaver Trapping Permit application by the Town of Concord to authorize the town administrator to sign. So you want to give us a little background on this, Nina?
Absolutely. It's my understanding from the Town of Concord that this application comes before the town on a regular basis, and that the application is for authorization to be able to trap beavers in the approved manner by law, and that in order to do so, they have to file with Mass DEP to request a permit from Mass DEP, but that they also need to seek approval from the town of Littleton as the property owner for where they intend to do their trapping. And as a result, they also have some time constraints under this process. It's my understanding that they currently have a I recall seeing a June 23rd, oh, there it is, June 23rd authorization to trap beavers through that date. And that's pursuant to Mass DEP's determination and approval. They're seeking that the town provide a signed copy of the application for emergency permit to manage a health threat caused by beaver or muskrat, which is a standard form. And ultimately, they are looking to address certain contaminants from the public water supply that I won't try to pronounce because I will inherently get them wrong. Finally, I know that there was a question by Selectman Glavy about whether or not we should sign on something like this, understanding that we do have there is ongoing litigation regarding Nagog Pond, and town council has written back that, and this was when our meeting had started, so I'm not sure if members have seen it yet, but that there are no concerns, that he believes as long as this is to maintain water quality. However, suggested that the water department confirm that the proposal won't impact them. So perhaps the board could amend the proposed motion to make it subject to water department approval.
Okay, thank you for that overview. Are there any questions or comments from the board?
I do want to share the insight that I gained from Conservation Commission when we were dealing with beavers. Jim Pickard's insight was that you can do anything you want, but the only real solution is a 22 and a stick of dynamite. So I'm not sure he would fully support this, but it's better than beaver deceivers or something else. So we're getting there.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, great.
Want a motion?
Yep, I think Judy's pulling it up right now.
And the only other thing I will say is this motion, and I think I mentioned by email, this motion is crafted to authorize the town administrator to sign all permits for these. But again, if you were to add that, you could modify the motion any way you desire, or add the language that was suggested by council to make it always subject to water department approval.
Okay. I mean, how often do we sign, well, to sign now or in the future necessary emergency permits to manage health threat caused by beavers? I mean, how often do those come before us?
Probably infrequently as once a year.
Yeah, right.
Once every year or two, yeah.
It might be twice a year. I think it might be fall and spring,
Okay,
depending upon beaver population. I know down my way, they've been abundant.
okay.
So Nina, your recommendation is to remove authorizing the TA for all and put in with approval of the water department?
I think it may, I mean, it's totally up to the board how you want to handle it. I think it makes it easier to just approve all and then have it be subject to water department approval. That way, if anytime we receive one of these, we would go to the water department, seek their approval or contest to it, if any. And then, notify the board that our office is planning to sign and then ultimately sign. But again, if the board wishes to only do it based on this specific application, that's certainly an option.
So by doing all, we don't see this ever again. And so they don't have to wait for a Board of Selectmen meeting in order to bring it before us. And if it is,
they wouldn't have to wait for a Board of Selectmen's meeting, correct? But the board could see it if they wish to see it before the town administrator signed. It really depends on what level of notification the board wants. If in the future I'm asked to sign this, if you vote this the way it is, I would propose notifying the board one day in advance of signing. But, if the board would like to see more time, we could accommodate that as well. Or the board could just simply approve each and every application as they come before the town.
And you're asking to insert language that it's subject to approval by the water department?
Correct. Based
All right.
on town council's recommendation on question of Selectman Glavy.
Okay.
I think I'm more comfortable just leaving it with a case by case, permit by permit basis.
Okay.
So I'll propose we move that the board vote to authorize the town administrator to sign the necessary emergency permit to manage health threat caused by beavers and muskrats at the request of the Concord Public Works, Water and Sewer Division as part of the filing of a determination of threat to a public water supply due to beaver or muskrat via Mass DEP, thereby allowing, after pertinent approvals are received, the trapping and removal of beavers from 94 Nagog Hill Road. Furthermore, approval would require review by the water department, Middleton Water Department.
Or is subject to further approval by the water department, correct?
That's exactly.
Second.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion?
No.
All those in favor, Mr. Knox,
Aye.
Mr. Gerbig?
Aye.
Mr. DeCoste?
Aye.
Ms. Napoli is aye, so the motion is approved as amended. Thank you. We are now on to item letter G, settlement agreement with the Town of Littleton Professional Firefighters Association, Local 4599. Nina, you want to lead us off on this?
Certainly. This is a settlement agreement relative to past grievance going back before my time, I believe in early 2019, regarding the use of fire personnel previously in dispatch roles. And at this point, the parties have settled, and unless there's further questions, I would essentially say we're just seeking a motion to vote in open session to approve the settlement agreement.
Okay, great. Is there any questions or further discussion by the board? We ready for a motion?
I'll move that the board vote in open session to approve the settlement agreement with the Littleton Professional Firefighters Association, International Association of Firefighters, Local 4599.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Mr. Knox,
Aye.
Mr. DeCoste,
Aye.
Mr. Gerbig,
Aye.
and Cindy Napoli is aye. The motion is approved as written. We are on to item letter H. We have a couple of donations to accept, acknowledge and accept. And I understand that Jess Cameron and her husband, Jarrett Cameron, are on the call, and I'd like to invite them in to speak to their donation to the Department of Elder and Human Services.
You want me to speak now?
Oh, I don't see you. Are you there?
Yep.
Hi.
Just ask to unmute. I unmuted.
Oh, perfect. So welcome. Thank you very much for this donation. It's certainly appreciated. And I just wanted to give you an opportunity to maybe tell us a little bit about yourself and the donation itself.
Yeah, so I'm Jess Cameron. I own Jessie Clicks Photography here in town. And I participated in the Front Steps project, which is a bunch of photographers did, kind of started locally and was then around the country to collect donations for causes local to them. And I chose the Council on Aging as my beneficiary for that. And had, over, I think it was 115 families in town and bordering towns too. I did some like just on the other side of the line on Acton and Westford, and everybody was just really generous and was able to raise a large sum of money that I was very happy to donate to the Council on Aging.
That's wonderful. It's a very generous donation, certainly appreciated, and certainly something that the town in that department could utilize and need. Is there any questions or comments from the board?
Just a big thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, very generous. Hopefully more will take your lead.
I was happy to help.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
And then the second donation we have for the Elder and Human Services Department came from the John and Eunice Morrison Charitable Foundation in the amount of $2,500, which is wonderful. Certainly something that, again, that department can use, and certainly incredibly appreciated during this time. So I don't know who was, how that donation came about, but whoever was responsible, certainly want to acknowledge them and say thank you on behalf of the board and the Department of Elder and Human Services. So we do have a motion to accept those donations.
I'll read that then. Move that the Board of Selectmen vote to accept the donations to EHS from Jesse Clicks Photography for $4,500 and John and Eunice Morrison Charitable Foundation for $2,500.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion?
No, ma'am.
All those in favor, Mr. Knox,
Aye.
Mr. DeCoste,
Aye.
Mr. Glavy,
Aye.
Mr. Gerbig.
Aye.
And Cindy Napoli is aye. And again, I would like to say thank you to Jess Cameron and to the Eunice Morrison Charitable Foundation for those donations. Certainly very, very much appreciated. The next agenda letter is I, and it's to schedule the meeting dates for the Board of Selectmen during the month of July. Nina and I had a discussion about this, and we just figured it might be helpful if we got a couple of dates on our calendars now, even though we're going to have new members possibly to the board after the election on June 20th. So we just figured it'd be better, instead of waiting till after the election, to maybe just put a couple of dates in there. We can certainly move things around once the new board is in place. I don't know if anybody is contemplating any time off or has any vacation plans for the month of July.
What are the proposed dates? I don't see them around.
We don't have any.
Well, it threw July 13th and July 27th out there, just as they relate in spacing to the June meeting, taking
Okay.
2 weeks
Oh,
out
there
from
they
the
are.
29th,
Okay.
just as a starting place for discussion.
Seems as good as anything to me.
Right.
If there's no objections, I'll make the motion. If anyone has any other input, that's fine
Yeah,
too.
as good as
No,
anything
that's
else.
Okay, I'll move that the board vote to schedule regular meetings on July 13th and July 27th of 2020.
Second.
Okay, motion has been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor, Mr. Knox,
Aye.
Mr. DeCoste,
Aye.
Mr. Glavy,
Aye.
Mr. Gerbig.
I guess.
Why not, right? Cindy Napoli is aye, and so wonderful. So we're on for July 13th and July 27th, 2020.
I thought Chase was going to amend that to say meet every Monday through the month of July.
Oh, boy. Okay, so we are actually a few minutes ahead of schedule for our public hearing on the fiscal year 2021 transfer station fees, which is scheduled to begin at 7:30 p.m. So I'm curious if the board members have all of the most recent information that was shared with respect to this topic. I know that we have received a few emails from the public. I'm certainly certain that some members actually received some phone calls. I know I did, just with some comments from residents about this topic. So I don't know if you need a few minutes to gather your thoughts. We can't start the hearing until 7:30, correct, Nina?
Right.
That is correct.
This is when the chair should sing a song or something.
Funny
You
that
can
you
also do
recommend that
minutes
now.
if you
You
like.
don't want me to sing.
If the board would like to.
And don't ask Chuck to sing.
Darling, Dankeschön.
No, you
Madam
got that
Chair, you
mute
could
button,
take
right?
up- You could take up minutes if you want, if the board was ready to take up minutes.
Okay.
I'm a few bars. I might know it.
Oh, boy. Name that tune. Okay, yeah,
Want the
that's
minutes? All right,
that's a
we'll
great
go.
suggestion.
All right, we have minutes from the meeting of May 18th. We also have the executive session, but do we vote those in executive session? That's what we do with those? Is it?
Yes.
I would recommend that you vote them in public session if there are no questions or discussion on them. If there is questions or discussion, I would recommend holding off.
All right. And I'll vote them, move them separately then. I'll move that the Board of Selectmen vote to approve the regular session meeting minutes of May 18th, 2020.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor, Mr. Knox,
Aye.
Mr. DeCoste, Mr. Gerbig,
Aye.
Mr. Glavy,
Aye.
and Cindy Napoli is aye. Mr. DeCoste, was that an aye?
So, aye.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay.
All right. Then want me to move the executive session minutes as well?
Sure.
Okay, I will move that the Board of Selectmen vote to approve the executive session meeting minutes of May 18th, 2020.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor, Mr. Knox,
Aye.
Mr. DeCoste,
Aye.
Mr. Gerbig,
Aye.
Mr. Glavy,
Aye.
and Cindy Napoli is aye. Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Glavy, for taking the lead on those motions. And we are,
A minute away. Quick song. Let's go.
you don't want me to sing?
Dankeschön.
It's 7:30.
Dankeschön.
Ah, thank you, Joe.
Hey,
Okay, excellent. So do we have a hearing notice to be read?
I would recommend that board vote to, I guess, well, we
Or do
we do have a hearing notice, but first I would recommend that the board vote to open the transfer station regulations and fees public hearing for Monday, June 1st at 7:30 PM.
So moved.
second.
Okay, motion has been made and seconded. Roll call vote, Mr. Knox,
Aye.
Mr. Gerbig,
Aye.
Mr. DeCoste,
Aye.
Mr. Glavy,
Aye.
and Cindy Napoli is aye. So the public hearing on the transfer station fees has been opened.
And Madam Chair, if the board would like, you can vote to, you can read the hearing notice, or you can vote to waive the reading of the hearing notice. Or I could read the hearing notice.
Yeah, does anyone have a preference? I just assume vote to waive the reading of the hearing notice.
I'm okay.
I move that we waive the reading of the hearing notice.
Second.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor, Mr. Knox,
Aye.
Mr. DeCoste,
Aye.
Mr. Gerbig,
Aye.
Mr. Glavy,
Aye.
and Cindy Napoli is aye. Perfect. Thank you. So this is a public hearing on the transfer station fees. Chris Stoddard, Mr. Stoddard had gave a brief overview at the last Board of Selectmen's meeting, and we scheduled this hearing date to give us some time to review the options that he's presented for the transfer station fees. I don't know if Mr. Stoddard's on the call and he can give a brief summary again to the public.
Yeah, I'm here. So basically, obviously, every single year we have to come back before you folks to we kind of go over the budget, and the intent of the transfer station fees is to collect all the revenues to offset the expenses. So by analyzing that every year, we hopefully don't have to, but some typically have to raise the rates a little bit. So this year, if we do nothing, we're at an approximate $101,000 deficit. A lot of that's coming from our recycling fees are gone up astronomically since we haven't been able to haul to the town of Groton like we used to. Our hauling fees have gone up close to 400% now. So we're back before you folks to ask for a slight rate increase. The fees that we had posted for the hearing, based on the feedback from the board at the last meeting, Cheryl and I sat down and went over the numbers, and we're able to close if we use, I guess what we could call as a general fund subsidy of approximately $65,000. We kind of revised our numbers to have to cover the difference, which would be about $35,000. So the new memo that I believe the board has now had a new recommendation for rates, which would be just a slight increase to the sticker fees and actually no increase to the bag fees. I guess the intention, from what I understand before my time, was that the bag fees were to cover all the costs for the solid waste, trucking, and disposal. And as right now, based on the numbers, the bag fees are sufficient to cover that. Where we're lacking is in the sticker prices can't cover the remainder of the expense. So it's kind of why we thought maybe it made more sense to keep the bags where they were and then ask for a slight increase to the sticker fees.
The other benefit of the bags was to incentivize people to use fewer bags by sorting better and recycling. But now we're in a pickle where the recycling is hurting us.
Yeah, correct. Actually, when back when the town did switch to pay as you throw, the trash went down 40%. But as you say, Chuck, its cost is gone. It's far more expensive to recycle now than it is to throw it all away.
Right.
Okay.
But to bear that burden by going up on the bag fees to offset the cost of recycling, Madam Chair, if I may just ask a question about the reasoning behind the $65,000 subsidy versus the 101. You and Cheryl spent some time on it, but just.
Yeah, I can. I'm hoping Cheryl can answer that question. That was the number I was told to shoot for.
Okay. You're on.
So when we estimated the revenue for the transfer station, when we built the budget, at that time, some of the costs were unknown. And when we do that as well, we don't know what the ability will be to raise prices. And so whenever we're estimating revenue, we're always conservative. And so we're, conservative in estimating the revenue that would be coming in from the transfer station in the event that the general fund might have to subsidize the budget if the budget went up too high. And so that's where the $65,000 came from.
Okay, so if we got into a pickle where we did in fact need that additional $36,000, that would just be a conversation that would have in the fall?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, what that would do, that would just affect the town's free cash, ultimately. And so so we always estimate local receipts conservatively because you never want to be in a situation where we've overestimated them. If the general fund has to subsidize the additional $35,000, ultimately that would likely just be a free cash hit when we go to get free cash certified next year.
Mm-hmm. I still have some reservations about going up $20 a sticker fee.
I have the spreadsheet. We can run the numbers. If you went up $10, oops, wrong one. Hold on. Bear with me. I'm running two computers here.
At the same time,
well, one of them's a Tandy.
If you went up $10 a piece, you'd be $85,000 deficit as opposed to $65,000. So $10 increase cuts into the you'd have to come up with an $85,000 subsidy rather than a $65,000 subsidy.
And you let the last proposal was, well, the front runner on the last proposal was a $20 increase in sticker and then increases on bag fees to make up the delta.
Correct. Yeah. If we had to come up with a full 101,000, we'd have to raise the stickers $20 a piece and the bag fees 75 cents a piece.
Yeah, I guess, I understand that the objective was to make the bag fees pay for the solid waste, but I'm not opposed to increasing the bag fees a small amount to keep things balanced, particularly because it has that disincentivizing component to it, just generating less waste. And if we played with that a little bit, we could probably still make ends meet. without increasing the sticker price a huge amount.
So one of the big complaints that I've been getting is how can you raise the bag prices? The quality of the bags has gone down. We can't put as much as we used to be able to put in them because they're not the same mill, or they're just not the same tensile strength. And so I think we'll get a lot more pushback on increasing the bag fees at all, especially since it's not going to offset the solid waste. It's going to offset the recycling. I'm still a proponent of subsidizing it and just not going back to the well every single year and increasing. That's where I'm at on it.
The only comment I've had so far is that people have trouble going up to $4 and definitely can't do $4.50, and they'd much rather see the bag fees stay the same. I understand where Chase is coming from. The reasoning is great, but some people just can't afford to make that change.
And I don't think it's having the same effect that it did initially. Chris just mentioned that, we saw a 40% increase in recycling, and that's because people were taking stuff and putting it in recycling instead of putting it in the purple bags. But I don't think we're having that same.
No, it's very linear now. Since that happened, we don't seeing an increase. And as far as the bags go, we haven't changed manufacturers or quality. It's just a matter of if the company who we're purchasing the bags from might have changed them slightly, but we haven't bought a cheaper bag. We're not trying to do it that way. If we did, I would come to you guys first, obviously.
It's a perception thing though, Chris. And that's,
Oh, no. Yeah, no, I understand. I just didn't want people to think that, I'm trying to cheap out by buying a cheaper bag to offset some of those costs. I haven't done that.
Yeah.
Right. Well, the input that I've received from the public has been concerned, especially from the seniors, is with respect to the bag fees. Not so much the sticker fees, but certainly with the bag fees. Many seniors are on a very, very limited budget. And I think we need to take into consideration that population with any decisions that we make when setting these fees. One of the requests I had specifically was there a way to maybe offset bag fees for seniors specifically? I understand that that's not really an option because we're not personally selling the bags. We don't have control over that. One of the suggestions was to maybe purchase the bags and maybe work it into the COA budget and be able to offer free bags to the seniors. But given that there's over 900 seniors who have annually purchased stickers, I don't think that would be a financially feasible solution.
Option.
So.
One option, and I know this isn't going to be a popular one, so I'm not saying that I want to do it, but I'm just giving you all the options. If you matched the senior sticker price with the current sticker price, you could drop bag fees by over 50 cents a bag. So if the problem is on the bag side, we could raise one and lower the other too. I mean, you have a million different options here.
Okay.
So Chris, what are you saying there? If we
So right now our senior sticker price is $50 and our regular is $120.
Right.
If you were we sell more seniors than we do regular stickers. If you raised the senior sticker price to the same level as the other one, you could cut the bag fees. Like I said, we could do it a million different ways. I didn't think that was going to be, I'm just giving you all the options.
I got you.
And then how much could you cut the bag fees by doing that, Chris? Or that takes a little bit more number crunching?
No, you could, we would go from currently at $3.25, we could go down to $2.50 a bag for the big ones. So you'd be cutting it 75 cents a bag.
Yeah, if you want up 125% on the cost of the sticker.
Yeah, no,
Right.
That's why I prefaced it with this is probably not the greatest idea, but
yeah.
But I'm just trying to think over a year's time, how that delta would work out. If you pay a flat rate extra fee for the sticker itself, and then a reduced reduced it on the other side, is that really a savings to the seniors, or is you just trying to?
No, it actually increases the cost to the seniors because you're reducing the cost of the bag across the entire user population.
Right.
Okay.
And you're making up for it by increasing the cost
Using
on the senior side.
Okay.
Chris, what was the first proposal you had?
What's that? I'm sorry?
What was the first proposal you just, with a $65,000?
So it was to increase both the seniors and the full price ones $20, and to keep the bag fees the same. That's the most recent one.
I'm comfortable with that.
Quick question, Chris. In terms of private haulers, are they getting killed as well? Like, how do we have any sense of how we line up against the private market here?
It's not the hauling. I think it's the hauling for us, but I think the private is the disposal costs.
Okay.
So we're seeing a 4% across the board. 4% a year is what we're getting told increase every single year.
And I use a private hauler, and they're getting killed as well. And they're all zero sort. So every piece of recyclable goes in the same container. So that then goes to a MRF facility, which has to be sorted, and more people are putting more and more in their recycling, which isn't supposed to be in the recycling, and that's all coming back on the private haul, the private, whether it be Tully or Waste Not. There's any number of Waste
Trash Man,
Public and Trash Man. Yeah, sure. So there's any number of independents that do it, but they're getting pinched every step of the way. They have all kinds of. I use Tully, and they try to educate their customers as much as possible on how to do it the right way, and they're trying to take as much out of the waste stream as possible.
The reason I guess I raised that is that I'm not super excited by the idea of subsidizing the transfer station operations from the general fund. And if it was a matter of if increasing our sticker and bag fees created some huge imbalance between the town versus private haulers, I might be more compelled to support a general fund subsidy on it. But frankly, if everybody's struggling, the reality is that it represents a system-wide cost that folks are.
There's no way to bring it.
Yeah, you got to pay it one way or the other.
Mm-hmm.
And I really struggle with the idea of a general fund subsidy on this.
So, but Chase, would you be okay with it on? I mean, it's really a Band-Aid. I don't want to go out on a limb and say it's a one-time subsidy. Chris, you could probably help me out with this, but Chris has come up with some pretty creative ideas on how we can offset the rising costs by either hauling the trash, buying a roll-off container, and his staff would then haul the trash up to Bill Ricca. Chris?
Fitchburg, and then we have to go back out to bid next year, so It would either be Fitchburg or Bill Ricca. Most likely Fitchburg.
But we wouldn't be paying the hauling fees. We'd be paying for the truck, but over time, I think you gave us some returns on that investment.
Yeah, it's about a 3.5 year payback on the truck.
And that's actually, Chuck, the one reason why I am willing to contemplate it. Mm-hmm. But I do think that's something halfway in between. A general fund subsidy partway in between the max shortfall this coming year, and passing some of those costs on makes some sense. I don't like it, but I get the logic of doing it as a 1 year kind of thing, as sort of a Band-Aid, like you said.
It's like a stopgap.
Yeah, I really don't like it though.
And it was unanticipated. And anytime we have unanticipated expenses on any other department, we're coming to the aid, and we're trying to figure out and make it work. So I just, but
I don't object to passing on some of the cost increases directly to the users rather than a general fund subsidy for all of it.
Okay.
I guess as far as I would go is I guess a $20 sticker increase with no bag increase. And is that the model, Chris, that you and Cheryl came up with? The
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
no bag increase, $20 sticker. And
Yes, $20 sticker increase, no bag fee.
and that would incur a $65,000 offset subsidy from the general fund.
Correct.
Okay.
Hmm.
I was going to open it up to public input at this time, unless you had anything else to add, Mr. DeCoste.
No, I'm interested to hear what the folks that didn't call us have to say.
Okay,
Well, as well as those that did call us, if they want to be heard.
right. Mr.
Okay.
Layton?
Christine Nordhaus.
Hi, Christine.
Christine, you're now unmuted.
Hi, can you hear me?
A little bit.
Okay, now can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Hi, Christine Nordhaus, Star Hill. I feel like I'm taking over for George Sanders with all my comments during select board meetings lately. But I wanted to make a suggestion about the subsidy. What about like increasing the sticker fees for the seniors by a few bucks, and then the town subsidizing the rest to make up the difference, so the price, the sort of the 900 stickers are the same price, quote unquote, as the regular stickers. And then the town, could sort of help out the seniors and then help out everyone with the bag fees. But excuse me, I'm sorry. I'm allergic to something. I'm also hugely in favor of passing the cost on to the people. Excuse me. I'm so sorry. I think that we should pay for our trash, period. And I think that, the town should, it's a personal responsibility thing. I have to hang up. I'm having an allergic reaction. Sorry.
That's okay. Okay, Mr. Layton, is there any other public input?
No.
Okay. All right, so is there any further discussion or comments by the board?
I wouldn't mind starting a dialogue earlier along the lines of hearing or pursuing some of the ideas that Chuck was addressing earlier. We always get these things handed to us when they need to be acted upon. Granted, we got it at the last meeting, but I would be all for scheduling sometime, at an odd time off cycle, a discussion of this, perhaps at the beginning of the budget cycle. Not that it has to impact that, but to give it a full airing, do that in a different context, to have that conversation in a different context. Just a thought.
Okay. Any other comments from the board? Are we ready for a motion?
Oh, do we have to fill in those? Somebody got to fill in those numbers, or I have to guess and read that?
I can read the numbers if you want, once you get to it.
Before we get to the numbers, I just want to, it doesn't seem like in reading the board that there's no consent, there's no consensus, or I don't have consensus for completely subsidizing. Chase, I've heard your concerns. Joe, you've expressed some interest in doing the sticker increase, $20 a piece, and no bag increase. Is that where we have consensus, do you think? I'd continue to advocate for a full subsidy, which is kind of outside of my norm, but with knowing that Chris has a plan in place to try to get us beyond this and be creative to solve this problem.
And how much would the full subsidy
101.
Yeah, 101,000.
And Cheryl had proposed 65,000.
Yeah, so it's an additional 30. What was that? 40,000.
36.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you. It's late.
All math.
Yeah, there you go. Look, I got a calculator. Those are good.
What are the board's thoughts on Chuck's comment?
Well, once again, I'd rather go with the proposal that Chris first came with the $20 increases and the same bag fee. Well, not a full subsidy.
Yeah, at this time, I agree with Joe. And
I'll come off my push. That's where I felt like the temperature was, but I just wanted to make sure that it was asked and answered. I can be comfortable with that. I just think, much more than that for the seniors is going to be problematic.
But just when we're getting into, we move into the territory of subsidizing, then it kind of changes our funding model, and we probably ought to have other people in that conversation, the finance committee, whoever, and really appreciate what it is we're considering.
Right.
So I think the motions, as I saw them, had the motion for the plan first and to close the hearing second. I think they should be taken in reverse order, to close the hearing and then make the motion on the. So I'll take it in that direction. And Chris, when I do get to the point where I'm sitting there gap mouthed, can you fill in the numbers for me?
Yeah, you got it.
Okay, so my first motion is I'll move that the board vote to close the transfer station regulations and fees public hearing for Monday, June 1st at 7:30 p.m.
Second.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor, Mr. Knox?
Aye.
Mr. DeCoste?
Aye.
Mr. Glavy?
Aye.
Mr. Gerbig?
Aye.
And Cindy Napoli is aye. So the public hearing on the transfer station fees hearing has been closed, and we're going to move on to the second motion. Mr. Glavy?
Okay. I'll be flying blind here. Okay. I'll move that the board vote pursuant to Town Code Chapter 181 to establish the following fee structure for the use of the Town of Littleton Transfer Station effective July 1st, 2020. Stickers, full price.
140.
What he said. Second sticker.
Seniors.
$70.
Senior.
$70.
Senior second.
$35.
Replacement lost sticker.
Oh, I didn't know we did that one. $5. Sorry.
Okay. I'm not throwing any curves in. I'm just reading out the script.
That should be punitive. If you lose your sticker, you should have to pay more.
I think the $5 is purely administrative.
Okay.
That's why I don't have it on my list. I'm sorry.
Per bag, 33 gallon.
$3.25.
15 gallon.
$2.25.
And finally, 8.5 gallon.
$1.25.
Second.
Okay, great. Thank you. Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor, Mr. Knox?
Aye.
Mr. Glavy?
Aye.
Mr. Gerbig?
Aye. Sorry, they stopped in to say goodnight. Aye.
Good night, kids.
Did I call Mr. DeCoste?
No.
You never do.
I
You
know.
always forget me. Aye.
Thank you. And
Good night,
Cindy
Ben.
Napoli is aye. Can't hear us. Excellent. Thank you very much, Chris. Thank you for your work on this. Cheryl,
Thank
Cheryl
you.
as well, guiding us through this. It's never easy. And to
Yeah,
Mr.
agreed.
Glavy's point, maybe we can try to revisit this a little bit sooner in the future, and there was some good alternatives brought forward through this discussion that I'd like to revisit again
Absolutely.
in the future.
Yeah, agreed.
So we are on to our next agenda item, which is the joint meeting with the Park and Recreation Commission and the Board of Health regarding Long Lake Beach.
So, Madam Chair, if you can give us a minute to try to promote people.
Sure.
Is that Mike Zeldin parting the seas?
I'm following Joe. Right back.
So how does it feel to be operating under the? Oh, okay.
Does anyone know if Gino is going to be joining us, or if he's under a different name?
It's usually Patty's iPad.
Okay, I don't see him at this time.
I'll give him a text and see if he's on his way.
If there is a member of Park and Rec and Board of Health who we did not promote to a panelist, if you can raise your hand. Okay, I think we have everyone. I'll keep an eye if Gino does join us.
I'm going to unmute myself. Thank you, Mr. Layton. So this is the Board of Selectmen joint meeting with the Park and Recreation Commission and the Board of Health. Just to bring the public up to speed on where we're at with this this topic. There's been 2 meetings in the past couple of weeks between the Board of Health and the Park and Recreation Commission to discuss the operation of Long Lake Beach during the COVID-19 pandemic. There was a meeting where it was decided that Long Lake Beach would remain closed through Memorial Day weekend. It would then open after Memorial Day weekend to give the Park and Rec and the Board of Health a chance to, well, basically the Park and Rec a chance to implement some of the procedures that they had put in place to operate the beach while complying with state guidelines relative to COVID-19, and also provide members of the Board of Health with an opportunity to observe those operations. Subsequent to that that week, I think it was a 5-day period. I know a working group came together last Friday, evaluated operations over the course of the week, and came up with their findings and their proposal at this time to continue the discussion with the Board of Health, who has not yet voted to issue their permit to operate Long Lake Beach. And following this meeting, scheduled at 8:30, there is a joint meeting with FinCom. So in the event that the beach permit is granted, the Board of Selectmen will then move on to a joint meeting with FinCom to discuss financing the operations of the beach this summer. So I'm going to ask you to unmute Louise Nichols, who's the chair of the Board of Health. And perhaps, I believe, is Alicia, I'm certain, is on the line as well. Louise, I don't know if you want to lead off the discussion at this point, or to provide the Board of Selectmen with an update.
I think it might be maybe Tim. It'd be better for Tim to give an update of how the week went.
Okay, great.
Thanks, Louise. Good evening, everybody. So we started doing the social distancing education on Tuesday. of last week, which is the 26th of May. We were down there every single day, all the way through today. And, you know, we did see some really good results. Everybody seemed to be, you know, doing a really good job trying to keep their 12-foot distances between family groups. People were doing a really good job as far as 6 feet on the beach as well as in the water when they were, you know, in their groups. Masks for the most part, all the adults who needed one had one. We really didn't see an issue with anybody having, you know, interactions with no masks other than kind of that teen group, you know, which they were more transient than they were really people who would kind of hang around out on the beach. A lot of teens on bicycles and stuff. We did, you know, Saturday is a good key indicator. We turned away 278 non-residents on Saturday alone. I don't know if any of you know, but the beaches in Chelmsford got shut down. And that was one of the places that we saw a lot of people coming because they had no longer had a place to go. Westford, Acton, and Groton are all kind of the other towns that we were seeing. The furthest travelers, the winners, were from Brookline, and they were extremely angry that we would not let them stay. I just, you know, might caution the Board of Selectmen. You may have an email about that coming down the pike, but we did send them on their way. So, you know, for the most part, I think, you know, it gave us the ability to see that, you know, it definitely does work. The people who are coming to use the beach want to do the right thing. We continued to get emails and phone calls by the droves about passes for the season. People, you know, generally want to do their part and help keep the beach open. So, you know, that's kind of where we're at. I guess I'll just turn it over to questions or kick it back to Louise or Alicia if they have anything to add.
I would appreciate it if Kevin gave us an update from the meeting you guys had on Friday.
Sure. So the long and short of it was that you know, when the beach is not policed, and it's more of a transient situation as per the guidelines, people seem to sort of be having a free for all. It's a lot more crowded. People aren't social distancing the way they should, and the long and short of it is, you know, Jim's comments as well thought that it was safer for public health to have the beach policed, especially between those really busy hours, for some reason, between 2:30 and 7 o'clock, where folks just sort of come in droves after work, come down there, and sort of once the Parks and Rec folks leave, it gets a little bit crowded. So it made sense to sort of keep that supervision in place, which would be for the benefit of public health.
The one thing that I would add from that meeting that's a little bit different. So when we originally had the discussion with the Board of Selectmen originally, and the Park Commission as well, those are really early days. So we were coming at it from the angle of worst case scenario, which is where Tim did a really great job of developing that plan that we would have a reservation system, and that we would have blocked out sections of the beach. At this point in time, and I don't want to speak for Tim, but I know we've had this discussion that the feeling was that it's not necessary at this time. But I think we should hold on to that plan if we do decide to, in the future, you know, open the beach to non-residents, and we are concerned about there being an influx. We should kind of hold on to that plan as a, you know, rainy day scenario to help us through if we get to the place where we feel like we're going to deal with an insurgent of people coming in from, you know, different places.
Cindy, can I jump in for a second real quick?
Absolutely.
So I went down to the beach 3 times this weekend just to sort of see how things were going. And this veers more into the revenue side of things, but I think we should contemplate allowing a certain number of non-residents to utilize our resources for a fee at the discretion of whoever's managing the beach at some date or time. Has nothing to do with people from other towns bringing COVID here. It has everything to do with the number of people at the beach at any point in time. And there were certainly opportunities from what I saw over the weekend, that someone with discretion could have allowed some non-residents to participate in the beach without any ill effect. So I think it's something we want to think about long term once we get everything under our belt with respect to residents only.
Okay, thank you.
Cindy, can I make a comment?
Sure.
I also stopped by the beach this weekend, late Saturday afternoon, I believe, and Tim and I, Tim counted the amount of people that were there, and I think it was between like 40 and 45, and it was around 3:30 on Saturday. And in my opinion, numbers were tossed around earlier so that the beach could handle between 80 and 120. In my opinion, I would think we need to be down near 80. I can't picture 120 people at the beach with all the distancing that needs to be happening. So I think around the 80 is a good number to target.
Right. And I think that's the number that we had arrived at based on some calculations of the beach that were made by Mr. Stoddard. I think what was right around that point, Louise, was 80. I visited the beach on Sunday afternoon. It was very nice. I had a nice tour by Alicia. We got to spend some time just talking through things, and she showed me some signs that had been placed and saw her interact with people that came to visit the beach. I mean, certainly, you know, having the limited, having the parking spaces marked off limits the number of people who can access the beach if they're driving in. I understand that, you know, people coming from other access points has been an issue, but I agree with you. I think you know, 80 is a good number. You know, and I don't know about the non-residents. I think it's easier to access, to limit the beach to residents only, Littleton residents only, as far as a management standpoint. I'd certainly defer to Alicia and Tim in that regard. I'm just concerned. I know that Chelmsford closed their beach, and as you know, if other communities do so as well. I can just see an influx of people from out of town thinking that they can access the beach, and then if they need to be turned away, maybe it creates more problems in the long run. But again, I would defer to Tim and Alicia to make that decision. But I know I'll be curious to see if there's any other questions from any members of the Board of Selectmen in this regard. But I appreciate all the efforts that have been put into trying to make this work and make the observations that took place this past week.
Madam Chair, can I speak?
Sure.
I also went down on Sunday, and to Chase's point, I just think it would be a dangerous thing to do because the management of it would be almost impossible. How could someone down there actually say, okay, I'm going to allow you from this town there, but not that person? I just think you're putting yourself up in a position that would make it very difficult to police.
Madam Chair, can I just speak to that point?
Certainly.
So I know it came a little late this evening, but I did kind of just bullet out some items for tonight. And one of those bulleted items in doing this and with the updated spreadsheet is I put last year's beach pass numbers at the very bottom of the spreadsheet. And what I had suggested was, you know, knowing that people possibly aren't traveling as much and that we may have an increase in resident passes this year, we may not, that now through June 30th, until we kind of get a firm grasp on everything, we only allow resident pass sales. So resident pass sales make up about half of what our annual revenue for the beach is. So what I was going to say is if we spend the next couple weeks, sell resident passes, see where we are compared to last year, and then based off of what that shortfall was, which in my best estimation is going to be about $22,000 without the non-resident income for this year, that if we did allow non-residents, we only open it up to people who have bought passes in previous years. And the reason I make that recommendation is A, they know kind of the flow of Long Lake Beach, but a majority of those families have close relationships with family groups here in Littleton, especially due to the regional nature of some of our sporting groups and some other stuff that and some of the other activities that we have here in cooperation with Groton and a couple of the other towns. But that would be, I think, the easiest way to manage. And to Joe's point, the way that we would vet that is, if everybody remembers, we put in the actual hard card beach passes last year where everybody has a membership card in hand that we issue them. So that would be how we would vet if one person was allowed as opposed to another person, because they would have their cards for their household with them once they were able to purchase that pass.
Madam Chair?
Certainly, Mr. Glavy.
You haven't heard it spoken to here, and I don't know if it came up earlier in the discussion. I just wonder about a basic legal question that I remember has been raised in the past, and that is whether we even have any authority to deny other residents of Massachusetts from coming. And that state, I know that comes from prior decisions at the state level. If you accept money to improve your facilities, such as monies to clean up the lake, which we have, monies to put in the dock, which we have, then you don't have a right to deny people from outside of the town. You can charge just as we do for residents. I know the town of Harvard attempted to do that with Bear Hill Pond, and they were told they couldn't. So I don't know whether we even looked into that or not, but that's something I think we should consider.
That's a really good point. That's a really good question. I don't believe that's been looked into, to my knowledge. I don't know if the town administrator has any comments to that.
No, Madam Chair, not at this point.
Okay. That's certainly something that that's a really good point, Mr. Glavy. Certainly something that we need to look into further.
Madam Chair, chairpersons, plural, Cindy, Lisa, may I make a comment?
Of course.
I can only speak to and want to speak to only the issue of health and safety. And I'd just like to remind all of us here that revenues from the beach notwithstanding, one of the prime concern at this particular point should be doing the best we can to do the best for the people in not only Littleton, but around us. I'd just like to remind us that the state is going to be moving to what's called phase 2 very shortly. Or phase 1 and 2 shortly, which means there's going to be, there already is movement in and around our, shall we say, immediate 20, 25-mile radius. And yet, so the risk and rewards of both are now changing, even as we speak. So my question is that I've heard a great deal about following certain customs or rules about distancing, none of which we know for a fact in this particular environment with the particular density we have in mind actually works. We really don't. It's all theoretical and it's no one's fault. However, that means that the risk remains unknown and undefined. So what I'd like to, since we can't define what works and what we've got a set of, shall we say, regulations for distancing, masking, and all the rest, I have yet to hear what criteria, whether it's crowd, whatever it is, what criteria, if any, has anyone proposed that says our experiment is not working? We should not be keeping the beach open. Because everything we've talked about are mechanisms to have the beach open, which I totally understand why. I'd love to be able to say, this is a great place to go, let's go. But given the fact that we have the population beginning to move in greater numbers than before, and the risk associated with this virus, before we make the move, I'd like to know what measures the town is going to be using that says we shouldn't be keeping the beach open any longer. In other words, how do we know what's working? And just because people are distancing doesn't mean it's working. It means that the guidelines are being followed. It doesn't mean that the health of anyone who visits the beach, whether they're residents of Littleton or not, or whether or not they are the grandparents of or uncles of people who live distant from here and get visited 4 days or 5 days after their grandchildren and their nieces and whatever have visited the beach in Littleton. I'm not asking here for us. All I want to know is, how do we know it's working? And without that criteria, without knowing how it's working, other than the fact that you're following a bunch of rules that are advisories on the part of the state, I don't quite understand why we're proceeding and spending the resources that may be used better elsewhere.
Madam Chair, do you mind if I respond to that?
Not at all.
Thank you. Good questions, Mike. The reality of the whole process with the different phases with the governor's guidelines is that, we have 3 weeks of implementation, and then there's 3 weeks of statistical data collection, right? Then at that point, that's where I'm saying we, not myself, but the state makes the decision of, do we decide that we're going to stay in this phase? Do we move back a phase? Do we move forward a phase? So that's the process that, is, above what we're doing here at the town level. So that's something that does have to be done on the state level with the state epidemiologists and, them collecting the data. They've done a lot of work to put in the information to these guidelines to ensure the fact that, we've got contact tracing in place, that, we're doing the testing, all of those pieces. So, again, if the state didn't feel comfortable with the plan of being able to move forward or even moving backward if we have to, I feel that they would not have, put that information out there or those guidelines as they are. And that's, my personal opinion on that.
Sorry to prolong the discussion. With the permission of the chair, people, just additional response to that, because I think it misses the point.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Zeldin. Are there any other comments from any other members of the Board of Health or the Board of Selectmen?
I'd like to make a comment, Cindy.
Certainly.
I think the original plan that Tim had of, the 2-hour time slots, and you have a name that goes with a square on the beach, would help as contact tracing, which you had said before would be a way to see who was sick and who they were near on the beach. I think I know you said you don't feel like you're going to need it because everyone's distancing themselves already. But maybe to Mike's point, is that something we should do?
Madam Chair, can I just add something to that?
Sure.
So, Louise, with our current pass system, regardless of if we did the boxes, we can scan every ID and it keeps a record and a timestamp of exactly who was on the beach at what time. We have a daily check-in. It's just like when you go to your health club. So we do have the ability to do that without necessarily having to put a physical marker down on the beach. Still know who was there and what time they were there.
Okay. Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments from any members of the Board of Health or the Board of Selectmen?
I just had a question, Cindy, probably to Mike. Are you looking to see if there's a spike in the numbers for the town, Mike? Is that what you're looking at, or what you're looking for in order to keep the beach open or closed?
No, it's not. It's more than a question of keeping the beach open or closed. That's just, one piece of a piece. What I'm looking for is to do what we can to make very, very sure that we understand what we're doing and have some trigger that tells us that we've shall we say, gone a bridge too far. I mean, I'm hoping we never hit that. And that doesn't necessarily mean a spike in cases in Littleton. Because if you do the calculation based on the World Health Organization, we're looking at a population in Littleton, excluding seniors and others, where we have a large number, as would be expected, of asymptomatic carriers. And that I'm not so much worried about the people who are on the beach. I'm worried about the people who are not on the beach and who are vulnerable to the disease as a result of movement. Because coincidentally, we're moving into phase. So I was looking to see if anyone had done some homework in the time that we've had this discussion that says for this beach and for Littleton, I don't mean just to protect the people in Littleton, what criteria are we using that says we should go forward? What criteria are we using that says, wait a minute, we got to slow things up, maybe make the rules of attending the beach more stringent? What I'm looking for is some way of knowing what we're doing, because we certainly don't know enough about the virus to know what we're doing. We can't test, and the testing going on in Massachusetts is pathetically still low through no one's fault except resources. So we're flying blind still. So I was looking for someone who's done some homework, whether it's with a team of epidemiologists or physicians or experts in the area of infectious diseases, who can say, okay, here's what you should use given the size of your population, given the size of what's around you. It may mean monitoring many, many towns of, shall we say, around us, looking at the data, the spreadsheets that you collect at the end of the day, I hope, and trying to find out what's going on. I have yet to hear anyone even attacking that problem.
Mike, is that not the purpose of the state's phased reopening and data analysis? And that is, they're not blindly authorizing moving from one phase to the next, or even guaranteeing what's in the next phase, so to speak, but rather evaluating are people contracting the virus as a result of getting their hair cut, as the result of going to the beach, as the result of going into their offices. And that's a level of analysis that is best done at the state level, that looks at the systemic operations and societal wide movement, so that we understand where the receptors are. What you're proposing is outside of the scope of what Littleton is capable of doing. It's outside of the scope of what any town is capable of doing.
All right.
What we're capable of doing is enforcing the guidelines and following the lead of the state epidemiologists who are looking at exactly what you're proposing.
Okay. I don't want to keep drumming on this point, but you just made the point. We don't know what's going on. And you're quite right. The state is in a position to do mass, or what they call, collect enough data. And we're sort of in a very funny position. We're this little statistical island where we can't know what's going on, yet we're going ahead. So the state can make up the criteria, have the guidelines, provide us guidance, and they have basically, I'll use your term, statewide data collection. We're going ahead with the beach, by the way, which follows recommendations that, as far as I know, are meant for state beaches along the ocean. That's what their criteria are based on for opening up beaches, not for ponds, as far as I know.
It's inland. There's a inland clause and there's a coastal beach clause, and they were both sent to you last week.
Yes, I saw them, and it still don't fit Littleton. The size and the nature. So I'm not suggesting we should shut the beach down just because we don't know what's going to happen. I'm just simply asking, what are we using that tells us that we understand what's going to happen, that guides us for our beach, since as I think Chase and I made the point that we don't know what's going on with our beach, because we're depending on state data, which lags anywhere between 3 weeks to a month, simply because we can't do enough testing.
So if I may, Mr. Zeldin, so Jim Greffy's been on a few calls where he's talked about contact tracing that is being performed by the Neshoba Board of Health. Any residents in Littleton who have tested positive for COVID are going through that process. So there is, on the local level, some degree of checks and balances and data collection going on. I think it's very different to look at this from the state level when we're just talking about a concentrated space within the town of Littleton, currently open to only Littleton residents. I think we do have a little bit more control over determining if what we have in place is working or not working. I mean, clearly, if there's a spike in cases in Littleton and, the Board of Health determines that a number of these residents had been at Long Lake Beach, that will give us some guidelines to work on and say, wow, what we have in place is certainly not working. I think it gets a little bit more complicated and out of our scope when we start to look at it from a state level. And that's just my personal opinion. Really, the point of this meeting tonight was to use the information that has been already provided to us, the observations that were made this past week at the beach, just to give your board, the Board of Health, the information they need so that they can make a determination about whether or not you want to grant the necessary permit. And in that case, then we're going to move on to our next scheduled agenda item with the Finance Committee to further discuss operations and funding for the beach. So I didn't know if there was any more questions or comments from any board members. I know I believe there's one resident who wanted to offer some public input. So I'd like to give that resident an opportunity to speak, if that's okay with everybody.
Cindy, I'm just going to jump in while Joe's trying to unmute that individual.
Sure.
If I may. I too spent some time driving down and observing the beach twice yesterday and once on Saturday. So just to kind of get a feel for numbers and that kind of thing, just to educate myself to be better prepared. But if I choose not to go to the beach, I don't have to go to the beach. People still reserve the right to make their own choices, and if they feel as though the proper precautions are not put in place and they don't think it's safe for them or their family, they can make that choice. At the state level and at the local level, the professionals that we employ to make sure that this is being done properly and there's systems in place, I put my trust in them. So this is what they do. And, Mike raised a good question, thinking that the information was relative to coastal beaches, and Tim is plugged in. He knows what's going on, and that there's two different sets of standards. So I just, I feel like we can put another time frame on it and say, hey, let's have another meeting on June 15th and see where we're at that point. And then we'll have more data points and we can kind of understand better and maybe tweak things, maybe loosen things up. Who knows? But, to kind of hammer it back and forth. We could certainly make arguments in either direction, but you just made a great point that the other component to this is how do we finance it? And frankly, I'm not sure. We're talking about subsidies with the transfer station. I think this is going to be a situation where we're going to have to make a decision and a determination to subsidize this, to provide a resource that has been used for has been available to our residents for, I don't know. I wish I had bought some of the Facebook postings that I see when Long Lake was selling for whatever, it was like $140 a lot or something like that. I wish I was able to take advantage of that. But Long Lake's been around a long time and people have been going there a long time, and it's just kind of an expectation. And a lot of things have changed. A lot of measures have been put in place, and I just think that we need to use caution, an abundance of caution, put systems in place. We need to trust the individuals that are responsible for doing this, and I do trust the folks at Park and Rec, the Park and Rec commissioners, and I appreciate the input that Mike and others have offered. But I think that unless and until we have data that says that it's being done wrong, then we need to move forward and trust those folks to do what's right.
Okay, thank you. I believe there's one more member of the Board of Health who wanted to make a comment.
Sorry, Park and Rec.
Oh, Park and Rec, sorry.
Yeah, I was wondering if somebody from the Board of Health can comment on, their thoughts on opening up the beach to non-Littleton residents. Is that something, that they're in favor for? Not.
Personally, I feel like if the social distancing can be maintained and the beach is not at capacity, and the Littleton residents, I feel like, should have first right of refusal. But if there's the open capacity there, I don't see the harm in letting someone in as long as they follow the rules.
I think I would reserve it for residents just because capacity, and if you allow someone, a non-resident in, and then they fill the parking spot that a resident might want 15 minutes later, then we have to turn around and turn away a resident. So.
I think the most important thing is capacity, like that mark of a total of 80 people or thereabouts. But Paul Glavy had brought up a good point: is are we available to? Is it right for us to turn people away from other towns? I think that's an interesting point that we should be careful about.
Thank you. Are there any other comments from board members?
Madam Chair, can I just make one quick point?
Sure.
To Chairman Glavy's point, I was just sorry. I've been actually reading through Chapter 91, just trying to gauge it. As a great pond in Littleton, or as a great pond in the state of Massachusetts, that is where there can't be a restriction to access to the water. So just to be clear, and even in the course of last week, at no time did we restrict access to the water to anybody. So anybody who came with a canoe, a kayak, a paddleboard, a motorboat was able to access the water either through the state boat ramp or the dock that we put in on Lakeshore Drive and utilize those parking spaces. I do think we, to Selectman Glavy's point, we might want to follow up the town council on the beach itself, but to my understanding, since I've been in this position and what I've been told, whether it's right or wrong, is that the beach is different because that is the town's property and that we had some kind of jurisdiction over it. At least that's what, in my conversations with the EPOs, my understanding was, as long as we had access to the actual body of water for non-residents. But I do think that we should get clarification on that moving forward at some point, just because the question's been raised.
Yeah, I don't misinterpret. I'm not advocating one way or the other. I just think, having heard that that was an issue elsewhere, it behooves us to to be on firm footing, whatever we do.
Okay.
And Madam Chair, if I could just add at this point, if we have grants and documentation that we've obtained in the past, that information would be instrumental in getting the answer from town council, because that needs to likely be reviewed to determine whether or not there are any restrictions.
Nina, I'm going to jump in here, and I definitely want to find out from town council, but I believe if we used any kind of borrowing to do any of the repairs or investments into the body of water, for instance, if we build the library and we have borrowing against it and it's under the MLBC's purview, we can't do anything to change that until that borrowing is paid off, for Alumni Field or any of the other projects that we've done where we've borrowed against it. I don't think it applies to grants, but I could be wrong on that.
It's something we'll definitely circle back with town council. It was a good question posed
Absolutely.
by Selectman Glavy. At this time, what?
Selectman Glavy's wicked smart.
Wicked smart.
I'm still awake anyway.
All right. So at this time, I know that FinCom is waiting. We're scheduled to meet with them at 8:30. We still need to, the Board of Health still needs to make their final decision. There's one resident who's been waiting. I'm going to take public input from one resident. I'm going to ask that they keep their comment or question brief, and then we'll move on. We'll defer this back to the Board of Health to see if they're ready to make a determination on issuing the permit for the beach.
Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to mention I live in the Long Lake area. I went to the beach on May 22nd. It was basically.
Can you just state your name and your address, please? I'm sorry. That's okay.
45 Washington Drive, and thank you for letting me speak. I appreciate this conversation and the thoughtfulness that's going into it. In the last couple of weeks, I've been to the beach 2 times. One was on May 22nd and one was on May 29th. There was a world of difference between those 2 dates. I went at approximately the same time of day. They were both Fridays. The first day, on May 22nd, when I got to the beach, I was really shocked to see the number of people that were there. I was the only person wearing a mask at the beach. I go there in order just to swim. It was almost impossible to get into the water and maintain 6 feet apart from people. I am in a higher risk category. And I was very concerned enough that I called the police department afterwards because the signs that were around the beach said, "Police take notice." They were too busy at that point, and the person who I spoke with who answered the phone said that they didn't expect that the police would be able to go to do anything. So that was during the time that the beach was not yet monitored by the rec department. On May 29th, it was a world of difference. It was comfortable. There was plenty of space. I had no concern about safety. My main point that I wanted to mention tonight is that if the decision is that the beach at some point will be closed, from everything that I'm aware of, that would mean that it will be the kind of free-for-all that it was on May 22nd with really no monitoring. And so people can come from all over at whatever numbers and whatever concentration. And that's a big concern for me as a Littleton resident. So I actually do feel that 80 is a high number for that little beach. But I just wanted to support the idea that the beach remain open so that it can continue to be monitored by the rec department and continue to really have a priority on Littleton residents. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. So at this time, I'm going to call upon the chair of the Board of Health, chairwoman, I might say, Louise.
Thank you, Cindy. Case, would a member of the Board of Health like to make a motion?
May I?
Kevin?
I'd like to make a motion to grant the permit to keep the beach open and have it be monitored and policed by the Parks and Rec Department and Tim and Alicia. As per their plan, it seems to be working really well, and I'd like to see that continue.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, so I assume, Cindy, I'll just do a roll call like I normally do, or?
Please, yes.
Madam Chairman, could we add an amendment?
Go ahead, Mike.
Just an amendment that would member Kevin Baker care to add a component that would give some guidance along health on the area of health, what health criteria that the Park and Rec should follow in order to assure that the beach stay open.
Health criteria meaning?
Well, for example, I mean, just being arbitrary, n number of days where social distancing is not being followed. I mean, I'm just pulled one out of the air, but I'd just like to know if we could add an amendment that expresses the fact that the permit is conditional on the public that uses the beach taking responsibility for using the beach is also responsible for following the regulations. And if it's not, then the beach should be closed.
Absolutely. If the plan that we'll implement is not able to be followed by the public and Tim and Alicia have a hard time.
That's too vague. I mean,
Implied.
what is conforming? In other words, is it 6 violations a day or 9? I'm just looking for some none.
I'm a baseball guy, 3 strikes are out. So,
all right. So in other words, you're saying 3 failures on the part of anybody during the course of a day means that is a day where
I would say if Tim and Alicia feel like they need to call the Littleton Police Department to implement the strategy and implement the plan to keep people safe, then that would be an infraction.
I
got a motion that's been seconded.
Okay, let's do the roll call. Kevin?
Kevin Baker, yes.
Lisa?
Lisa Flanagan, yes.
Mike?
just want to understand, so that just want to understand what we're agreeing to here. So the call of the police is counted as basically non-conforming. Is that correct? And that will lead to closure of the beach?
I think we're going to let the professionals handle it, Mike.
Now, this is a health issue, and you can dance around it all you want, but
Not
I'd like to
dancing.
find out you're dancing. No, you're dancing as
Not
usual.
dancing at all. I trust the professionals.
The police are not professional epidemiologists, and neither are you. So I'm
No,
just
I'm not.
asking.
Neither are you.
Actually, I don't want to get into it with you.
Mike,
Yeah,
Mike, please.
It's
We're
okay.
gonna leave
I'm
it.
tired.
We're gonna,
Okay, as is. Mike Zeldin, no.
Louise Nichols, yes.
Okay. So that was 3 yes, Louise, and 1 no?
Correct.
Okay,
Thank you.
you're welcome. Thank you very much. Appreciate the discussion. And we're gonna move on now to a joint meeting with FinCom to discuss beach operations and financing of those operations. Now that the permit's been granted, Board of Health members are certainly welcome to stay on the call and participate in that discussion if they so choose.
Dropping like flies.
Not too far behind.
Oh, hi, Louise.
Hi, Louise. Thank you.
Bye, Louise. Thank you.
No, I'm staying to listen. I just
Oh,
wanted you to
okay.
know that I'm still here.
Oh, all right. I thought you were waving goodbye.
Can't tell the difference between the hello wave and the goodbye wave.
Louise, as an aside, while everybody's jumping in, were you able to get on that call this afternoon?
Yes, I was, Tim. Thanks a lot for sending that link. It was interesting.
Awesome. Thank you.
Mr. Layton, let me know when everybody's on the call.
I am looking. I think I've grabbed everyone. If there is anyone that I did not, please raise your hand.
Okay, we ready?
I believe so.
Okay, great. Excellent. So thank you, members of the Finance Committee, for your patience. Thankfully, you didn't wait as long as you did last time we had a joint meeting. So I appreciate you being here tonight. So as you, many of you probably just saw, we just had a joint meeting with the Board of Health, who voted to issue a permit to the Park and Rec for operations of Long Lake Beach. Previously, the Park and Rec commissioners had presented a few funding scenarios with respect to operations of the beach. I believe that there were some changes made to that information. I'm going to defer to Tim, or I don't know if a member of the Park and Rec commissioners would be more appropriate to maybe walk us through where we're at this point as far as financing beach operations this summer, and certainly looking forward to hearing that information. And then we'll get questions and comments from members of the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee. Do you want to start us off, Tim or Alicia?
Yeah. So I know that you guys have been on a long meeting, and in the interest of time, I just wanted to hopefully just kind of present some bullet points that we can get through, and then just field any questions that need to be kind of fielded. So obviously right now, the period that we're looking at, we're already at a deficit due to the spring programming, and we're not looking to increase that at all. So basically, my proposal tonight would be that bullet point number 1, we operate the beach, or we're requesting to operate the beach starting tomorrow, beginning to sell passes, and we do so as residents only through June 30th. That gives us a gauge on what we'll see as an uptick, how many more residents will gather possibly over last year. The next conversation that I think both boards need to engage in is that the discussion of whether the resident rate of $60 is going to remain, or if we have to move that to $75 or $100 to mitigate some of the difference in revenue projections without the non-resident users. And then I had mentioned this to Selectman Chase, if there was possibly a conversation to be had about requesting that any resident who might be experiencing a hardship from COVID is able to contact the PRC or the Board of Selectmen to possibly have the Board of Selectmen cover what I would call hardship passes for the summer of 2020 to cover whatever we set that fee at. The request for the Board of Selectmen FinCom to allow us to begin the hiring process of the aquatics director, lifeguard, sailing instructor positions, which would be for the month of June, 2 additional staff members paid at the aquatics director rate of, excuse me, $20.43. So that would make up myself and 2 other people to operate the beach through June 30th at a cost of $11,627. If you scroll to the bottom of the sheet that I had sent out this evening, if you don't have it in front of you, I'll just read out the numbers. To give a summarization, last year, we sold 470 resident passes at a total of $18,504. So if we sold the exact same amount this year, we would cover the cost of what the June operations would be. What I'm proposing is that we revisit on July 1st, which is also the new fiscal year, the ability to open up additional revenue by selling either day passes to non-residents or selling memberships to non-residents that have bought in the past based off of the data being collected, what the state is telling us, the direction that the data is showing, and any other factors that we take into consideration during that time. Last year, we sold 278 non-resident passes. Non-resident passes were $19,805. So we sold less than half the amount, but it was almost $2,000 more in revenue. So the non-resident passes, even though they're half of our makeup, are 50%, 52% of what we actually make to run the beach. If we operate it, if we only sold passes to the same number of people that we sold last year, which is pretty much the equivalent of what all of you experienced as a user group. If you had come to Long Lake last year, you would notice there's a morning group, there's a late morning group, an early afternoon group, and then everybody who comes after 5 o'clock. And with that makeup, what you saw this week, specifically on Thursday and Friday and Saturday when it was really nice, that's a typical day under our normal pass sales. So I would hope that we could eventually get to the point where that would be the model that we use, so that if we assume that under the assumption putting forth that we would run $11,627 in June, the cost in July would range between $14,380 if we just kept the 3 people doing social distancing. If we added lifeguards, it would be $16,136 for 2 lifeguards to sit on the stand in the new fiscal year. And in August, if we just did the 3 people, it would be an additional $16,297. If we kept the lifeguards, the total would be $18,054. So to give you the full rundown of what the summer would look like is if we ran June through August with 3 staff only, it would be $42,305, which under last year's staffing model, we could cover with our pass sales. If we added 1 lifeguard, it would be $44,061.62. And if we added 2 lifeguards, it would be $45,817.78. So if we were to add on the Snack Shack, which we've applied for a permit, and do packaged foods, we've already had people coming down who are asking for, ice cream and stuff like that, because they'd rather come down there and get ice cream than go to Kimball's. Generally we see about $10,000 to $14,000 worth of revenue just on sodas and ice cream. I would venture to guess we would probably cut that by 50 to 25% this summer. So that's ballparking between $2,500 and $5,000 of additional revenue. And if we hired 2 sailing staff, the sailing program would make us between $200 and $2,000 a week. So with all of those in place, we could definitely find a matrix. We could definitely back into the number where we might actually not need a subsidy for this summer to fund the beach. Originally, when I had proposed that back a month ago to everybody, none of us knew what this looked like. We were, throwing darts at the wall because the state hadn't issued us guidance. I think we have a much clearer picture of where we're kind of going. As the days goes on, I think we'll get a better understanding of, the families who want to go out and have a safe alternative to do things like visit Long Lake Beach. And I think, today being June 1st, if we start at past sales for residents only tomorrow, by June 30th, we'll have a really good idea of what percentage year over year that we're hitting. So this period last year, when we put passes on sale on April 1st, by this point, we had done $42,000 in pass sales so far. And we had done an additional almost $5,000 in Snack Shack and parking revenue by day passes. So the number's very attainable to back into. With that, I'll kind of open it up to questions for anybody who might have them.
Thank you, Tim. Okay, my head's spinning a little bit, so I'm gonna, that's all right. I'm just trying to look through my notes. I'll open it up to members of the Board of Selectmen or or FinCom, members of FinCom, if you have any questions or comments.
Cindy, this is Betsy. Can you hear me?
I can. Hi.
So my question really is for Nina, I think. So my question is the funding and the timing from this fiscal year to next. If they're selling stickers, is it because the enterprise fund, it really doesn't matter, or what, in terms of selling stickers now and paying for things now versus July and August? Can you address that, please?
Sure, through you, Madam Chair. So the enterprise fund is subject to the same constraints as the fiscal year. So revenue received in the fiscal 20 will be captured as part of fiscal 20's funds, and then it would close to retained earnings once free cash is certified for the town. It's part of the same process. Once the retained earnings are certified, then those could be used for further appropriation.
So that's on the books kind of stuff. The issue isn't so much then, is there cash there or not? It's really the bookkeeping is what that addresses, correct?
I believe so, but perhaps I missed your question. I think you were asking, when the deposits occur essentially and how they affect the financial process.
Yeah, I'm just thinking if they sell a lot of beach stickers in June, does that mean there's no money left in July and August to pay those bills from those beach stickers? That's what I'm trying to get at ultimately.
Yeah, there will be a lag in availability of those funds between that time, because at that point in June and July, the retained earnings would not have been certified, most likely. We don't have a historical practice of having free cash certified even that early. I'm not sure exactly what the history of the town is, but I think October is probably right around the time frame in which free cash has typically been certified, or later at times. But I defer to Cheryl to hear if there are any nuances on the enterprise fund in this particular scenario as it relates to availability of funds.
No, Nina, what you stated was correct. The revenue that's received in June effectively counts and closes at June 30th. So the stickers that they sell now aren't then rolled into July. So the expenses will be in June, some in June, but some in July and August. But the revenue that they collect in June goes to fiscal 20.
So that's not relevant for this year anyway. That would be every year. So I'm glad we don't need to pull everybody down into the financial.
Yeah.
But in normal years, we have more of a float, right? So how does that, to Betsy's point, right? If this isn't a normal year, do we back ourselves into some accounting corner when we have to pay invoices in July or August and we don't actually have the revenue from the sticker sales in June?
But so then what will happen is then next June, they'll have the revenue that will replenish. So, and it's a similar thing that they go through it with their summer camp too. It's, you know, the timing of the revenue and then the payments aren't always exactly in the same fiscal year, but they're always kind of playing catch up. So it's just a continual cycle.
It's rolling.
Not gonna be not having money in the bank. It's not that. It's just the bookkeeping, the accounting part of it, how it's happening. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Cheryl.
You're welcome.
Any other questions?
I just had a question since we're talking about, one or two lifeguards. What's the discussion on, are they going to be given a different authority this year? Are they getting involved in this policing of the beach? Of, people being too close to each other? How does their role fit into this new, I'm not going to say it. Yes, I will. New reality, the new normal, whatever you want.
So Gary, in talking with our colleagues in our weekly meetings, we've had, discussions at length about this, and a lot of towns have, implemented a requirement where no one's allowed within 6 feet to 12 feet of the actual lifeguard stand. The lifeguards, do or do not wear masks based off of when they're doing rescues or, interacting with the citizens. One of the reasons that I put forth in my proposal was the fact that we were going to use the higher rate to pay the aquatics director was I did reach out to Nat Newman, who's been our aquatics director in the past, who unfortunately was impacted and his internship fell through. And he is very willing to come back. So my plan would be for it to be myself, Nat Newman, and our current aquatics director, Matt Adama, to be those voices of kind of the people who have to have those tough conversations. If for whatever reason it did need to be escalated, we would all, have the conversation that, it would go immediately to the police if that was necessary, such in the case of the couple from Brookline this weekend where I had to call the PD on them. The lifeguards would be there to watch the water, to, enforce social distancing of 6 feet in the water. But as far as, things back beach, that would be the job of, myself, Matt, or Nat for the summer, so that the lifeguards could focus on public safety in the water.
How many lifeguards do you normally hire?
About 18.
And now we're going to do it 2?
Well, so it would be 2 a day, to be clear. So we would have both stands up, and then we would just kind of rotate down through if that's what we were going to do. I'm trying to understand those, the lifeguard staffing that you're proposing, whether it's 1 or 2, that's similar to other years? It's similar, but they'd be sitting on stand for a lot longer.
How many though, Tim?
2 per day.
But you're not hiring 18.
I'm sorry?
You're not hiring 18 though. How many total
I'm not.
lifeguards?
8, 10? 6 at the most.
Okay.
So essentially, if you look at the staffing model that was put forth, if we were to do lifeguarding at highest peak, you would have the 2 aquatics directors, and on Saturday and Sunday, you would have 3 lifeguards there so that they could rotate through the different positions, including the snack shack.
The one thing to keep in mind too, Betsy, is that the deep dock will not be going in, because clearly that's something we can't keep sanitized, right? I know people will be very upset about that, but that's the reality. Is it's a health issue. Like, we can't keep it sanitized. So that's another position that the lifeguards won't have to actually be out there on the board to watch that deep dock. So as well, the main dock in the middle currently is not there. So that's another position that's been eliminated, just for the fact of the way that we have things set up at this time.
And then the other plan is to move the swim rope into chest deep water. So any rescues essentially will go from deep water rescue, which is, much more difficult and you need more people to perform, to a shallow water rescue.
Hey, Tim or Alicia, we'll at the
Who is that?
Can you hear me okay?
Oh,
Great.
now we can.
Sorry. This is a question for Tim or Alicia. Last year you sold, by my math and the numbers you just shared, 748 stickers. Based on the new guidelines that you're talking about, having no more than 80 people there at a time, will 748 stickers be too many? Do you think? Have you done that math?
So I hadn't, originally when I had done the math and we broke it up into the boxes, the number that I had landed on was around 525 is if everybody came, every single day, kind of got their spot, and, we did some sort of a 2-hour rotation. But the other thing to keep in mind is a lot of the stickers that are attributed into that 748 number are senior residents who come very early in the morning or on the tail end of the day. We also have a lot of residents who are only weekday or weekend users because of different vacation homes and other opportunities that they have. Although this year that might be very, very different, which is why I want to take the rest of the month of June to figure out where that number percentage-wise year over year is going to land. But like I said at the beginning of this, and I stand about 95% of the way there, that if we sold exactly what we sold last year, it would be a very manageable situation for us to enforce exactly what everybody saw this week down at the beach at its peak of Friday and Saturday.
Tim, how many non-residents? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Greg. I didn't realize you're still going.
Yeah, just following up. Thanks, Chase. So if you have this, let's say you sell the 748 that you sold last year, you don't have any concerns at all about capacity issues or any issues with health? None?
So I do have concerns about capacity issues. And, I think, I forget if I spoke to Chase about this or somebody who I'd spoken to when they were down there this weekend. And, there might be times that we have to, tell somebody, hey, we are at capacity right now. Can you come back later? That might be a conversation that, might lead to some sort of refund on their pass. Of course, that would, if they got a refund, that would be something. But those are all conversations that we can have. But I do think that there, are going to be times that we're going to have to, say, hey, we're at capacity and we need to turn people away. But I foresee that happening no matter what the number of passes that we sell, knowing that that number that we're shooting for is right around 80 to 100.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, you're going to have a 90-degree day and everybody's going to want to go to the beach, right? I mean, that's typical. I guess I was just concerned that if you sell too many stickers, that people won't be able to get access to the beach, and then they'll be upset because they spent money on a sticker that they really can't use, or they're limited to
And
how much use they could have out of it.
And I know Chase wanted to jump in, but just that was why I had given everybody the resolutions of also charging daily rates as well as just per car parking, because if I know those spreadsheets were long and drawn out, but if you look at those 3 scenarios, that end number that gets somewhere in that $45,000 range, any of those scenarios that comes out to that delta will, be something that would fund the beach at a break-even cost this year.
Okay, makes sense. Thanks.
Greg, I wanted to add one other piece to that as well. So one of the things that we haven't discussed yet, which isn't necessarily super important for tonight, but we want to create a working group where we're going to continue to have these discussions on a weekly basis. And we're hoping that, since Betsy is the Parks and Rec liaison from the FinCom. Hopefully, she'll join us on those weekly meetings. Either Kevin can continue from Board of Health, or Louise, Board of Selectmen, anybody who wants to be there. We want to try to have fire chief, police chief, and to continue these conversations throughout the summer. So again, everything that has happened with this pandemic has been fluid. So we want to be able to work in a fluid environment where we're continuing the communication on a high level so that we're making the best decision that's not only safe for the individuals that are visiting, but for our staff, and financially being responsible as well. So all of those things are extremely important to us throughout this whole process. So, that is something that we do want to encourage and continue to do week after week throughout the summer.
Yeah, I get it. Thanks, Alicia. Thanks, Tim. I get it. It's a fluid situation. I guess just my concern is obviously from the financial side, is you being able to be sustainable and operate your business. But on the other hand, as a resident, I'm always concerned that if we've sold too many stickers and we can't accommodate everybody because we have space issues there, that's obviously a concern too. So thanks for answering my questions.
Great.
Madam Chair, may I just add
Certainly.
something?
Yep.
So I think in regards to Greg's concern, I think something that would be important for us to do as Park and Rec is add a disclaimer or talk to the people when they come into our office that, we do need to limit the beach capacity, due to the epidemic we're in, and, fully disclose the situation we're in, and, let people know that there may be a situation where you come to the beach and, you either have to wait, come back later, or, whatever, but you may not be allowed in the beach based on numbers. And I think if we're just upfront with people about it, I think we can handle it that way. Just my thought.
I just look at it, go down the Cape, the National Seashore. You need to get there early if you want to get into the beach. And there's days that we've pulled up, either waited in line and waited to have access to the beach, or we've turned around and gone to another beach. So it's something that you can't predict. But that being said, so right now we're looking at, your goal is to sell 748 passes at $60 per pass to meet the benchmark that you're hoping to meet. Is that what I'm understanding?
So the only issue with that is the 748 number was a combination of $60 for residents and so 60 and 25, so senior residents and family households.
Okay.
And non-residents were at 125. So at the beginning of the conversation, I had made the statement that it might be open for discussion that if we were going to leave it just for residents, and that's how we were going to go for the whole summer, knowing that there was going to be no opportunity to generate additional revenue, that we might need to bump that resident number to 75 or 100. The caveat to the other piece of that is we sold residents at 60 for the month of June, and we left ourselves the opportunity to either sell day passes or non-resident passes come July 1st based off of how things are trending in order to make up for that shortfall.
Okay.
Or that would be essentially when I had proposed this, 30 days ago, and I had sent everybody these sheets and said, would the Board of Selectmen, possibly think about doing a subsidy? So to Greg's point, last year we sold 470 resident passes, which was $18,504. I assume that there's going to be a slight uptick in resident passes. Based off of that, without non-resident passes, that would leave us almost $22,000 short. So that was when I had said, does the Board of Selectmen, would they be interested in subsidizing if we were to stay residents only at a $60 rate? That would be the shortfall that we would be looking to possibly have covered this summer.
For the entire summer?
For the entire summer. It would be $22,000 plus if we added in, if residents had a hardship, that they could come and get the town to fund their pass. that was the other thing that I wanted to just come back to.
Okay.
So Tim, we get into that scenario if we say from now until June 30th, we want a $60 pass. We're open to the idea of doing non-residents or day passes. We get to the end of the month and we say, nope, that wouldn't work. Now we've essentially underfunded it and the town is going to have to then pick up that delta, that $22,000 delta.
Correct. Or in July, we could make the decision that it's running well. We've moved into phase 2, at which point in phase 2, the distancing becomes 6 feet rather than 12 feet. And at that point, we could possibly start to increase the number of non-resident passes. Like I said, I would suggest that if we go down that route, that we sell to non-residents who has purchased a pass in the past, twofold, to allow family groups that, hang out with people in Littleton to be together, but also the people who come here know and tend to respect the beach. It wouldn't be as much of a free-for-all, but I leave that to the boards to decide.
Okay. So one other question. So this is just with respect to beach operations. What about with Camp Tehadawon? Are you going to be seeking any subsidizing or financial assistance from the town for that program?
So I'll let Alicia speak to that. I will just point out, everybody, if they check the Google Doc that I sent you, we just got the camp regulations at 2:00 today. It's 33 pages. So if you can take some time to read through it, John Kazanjian has done an amazing job throughout this whole entire time, putting everything in place. And he almost hit the nail right on the head from all of the meetings that we've had. So we feel very strongly that we do have a good plan in place, and I'll let kick it over to Alicia.
Yeah. Just one really quick statement about that, because I know that it had come up in a few conversations over the weekend. So with these new guidelines that came out today at 2, there will not be swimming at beach for camp programs. So that is something that, we will have to implement that the program will solely take place at Shaker Lane. So, knowing that, that's, one thing that we have solidified. So I guess moving forward, as far as camp is concerned, so the request for Article 13 at town meeting is covering the deficit that we are dealing with currently. So that includes staffing costs for the full-time staff with benefits. And it's also covering us in the case that we were not able to run Camp Tehadawon. And remember, we're not past that hurdle yet. So that's something where we have the guidelines. We're really hopeful that we're going to move forward. But as we're in this phase 1 right now, if, for some reason the state decides to hold off and stay in phase 1, or to, which we could still do outdoor education programs like sailing, but if we have to stay in phase 1 or have to move back to like phase 0, we still would not be able to run camp, right? So that's something, when we talk about this fluid momentum that we're kind of going through with this whole process, that's something that we have to kind of keep in mind. So, in regards to asking for the recoup, that is all going to be combined in that Article 13 at town meeting.
Okay. All right. So there's no other request for funding or assistance that will come from the operation at Camp Tehadawon?
It shouldn't, no.
Just to clarify that. Okay.
Yeah. What we do need, and this is not for tonight, like this is something that we need to, and this is again why we want to continue with the working group, is that we're going to go through the same exact process with Camp T, since it is a licensed program that we are going through with the beach right now. So, we want to keep privy, have everybody in communication. And currently where we're at, if we were saying no seasonal staff, period, we're only full-time staff, that doesn't allow us to prep and train the staff, nor to get camp ready as far as like setup and things like that. If camp is supposed to start on June 29th, which is the projected time at this point in time. And I realize, the quote is consistently, we're going off of statistics and data, not dates. But as we've sort of forecasted and saw what those dates are, if everything ticks the boxes and we're able to move into phase 2 smoothly, we would be able to start camp on the 29th of June. So then you've got 2 days worth of Camp T staffing, as well as the training that we would need to pay for in the month of June, which is the end of fiscal year 20.
Okay. Okay, so is there an, so how much currently is in the fund for Camp T? There's a deficit there.
Yeah, so it's
In the
kind of
enterprise
like
fund?
all over. Yeah, so with the enterprise fund, everything is kind of like mashed together, so to speak. So, you know, it's the overall amount of money. And at that point, because we've given, you know, we're based off of our programs and the revenue that we make. And normally on a normal year, we're great. We do really well. But because we've had to cancel our spring 1 program, spring 2 programs, you know, we're going into the summer, we're going to have to get rid of our LEAP program. We got rid of our after school program. So there's like a whole list of programs that we've had to either completely abandon because of the COVID-19 pandemic, or we had to figure out how we could try to make them a virtual program. And that's been kind of hit or miss. So, you know, that's been one way that we've brought in a little bit of revenue along this path. So, I mean, at this point in time, you know, the numbers are changing consistently. You know, we have people that are saying that they want to come to camp. You had asked about the numbers. So we had 99 families currently, or children, unique numbers, 99 kids that are registered for Camp T at this point in time.
Okay.
And when I say unique numbers, some of those kids will come multiple weeks, right? So it's not necessarily just 99 kids. And then there's also 35 families that are on the wait list at this point in time. So there's definitely a need out there for families. And I think, you know, if we're hopefully able to run the program, you know, and as things go on through the phases, we're hopeful that maybe people will feel more comfortable in, you know, bringing their kids to the program, because it has very strict guidelines of, I'm not going to go through all of them because you guys have all the documentation, and I will go through them in the future, but not tonight.
Okay. Yeah, we'll definitely, we just didn't have time to review all that
No one
information
did.
prior to the meeting.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, I guess my line of questioning is just geared towards, I just want to try to get a comprehensive overview of what we're looking at right now. And not be, I don't want to say blindsided, but have something come up in July where all of a sudden, you know, we're like, oh, we're in the middle of this programming and, you know, X, Y, and Z has come about, and, you know, we've got to come back to the town and ask for additional funding, you know, just for planning purposes, just trying to get a really good handle on this situation overall, so that we can make some educated decisions going forward with the discussion here tonight. So I appreciate that. Are there any other questions or comments from board members?
Yeah, I had a couple more. So as far as the passes go, I'm getting back to the beach. I guess my concern is everything going to be done through a appointment system to use the beach, as in you just can't walk on the beach? And if so, I guess that's kind of where I get caught up in. You have taxpayers that are being hit with taxes if we're subsidizing. So they're actually paying twice, right? Part of their taxes are going to subsidize the beach, and then they have to pay a fee to go to the beach, but they can't get on the beach because non-residents are coming, have booked all the slots. You know what I mean? So that's where I kind of lose the non-resident part, at least this year. Whether it's on Friday, Saturday, or Sundays, we block out non-residents. I don't know the beach traffic on every day of the week, but or something where I foresee if we're using a scheduling mechanism, we lose, you know, our residents lose the ability to have first dibs to get onto the beach, and that's tough for me, to swallow. I would think that, a resident would pay the extra $100 knowing that they could probably get onto the beach because we have the schedule system, which we normally don't have.
So Gary, we're not gonna implement the scheduling system at this time.
You are not? Okay.
I don't think that was that was a month ago when I honestly didn't know what this was going to look like. And we were just worst case scenario. But as the beach was this week, it was very manageable with people showing up. And that was my point of there may be times that we have to turn people away, but I don't think that will be the norm. Yeah. I do think that we have to have a plan in place for days like 4th of July and we have about 4 or 5 days where we actually get crushed down there. And I think we have to have a plan in place for those days.
Okay.
Is there a model in the future where we could contemplate non-resident day passes on a discretionary basis? You get very comfortable with the rhythm of the lake and that Tuesdays are just quiet days. Then we sell some non-resident passes if they show up those days.
Or maybe on
a day pass basis.
Maybe when it rains, Chase.
Sure. In cloudy. Yeah. And 50 degrees. But I mean, this weekend, Tim, you said you turned away what, 100 and how many did you say? Was it amazing? 100 and some odd non-residents?
We turned away 278 non-residents on Saturday alone.
And I worked on Sunday, and it wasn't as busy, and I turned away 100.
So Gary, you joke about when it rains, but based on that, we might still sell non-resident passes those days.
Yeah, but the other side is I'm sorry, I should go through the channels here, but if we don't do anything, word gets out and it's going to be a free-for-all with people coming from everywhere. We're turning those kind of numbers before it's even really that hot.
Yep.
So one of the proposals in the initial thing as well, just to kind of throw it back out there into the conversation was, I would like the ability to have the discretion to sell, per carload and day passes to non-residents when we get further down the road, because I do agree that we have to do some data collection and just make sure that this is working before we, go to the next step. But to that point, it's very easy to use our social media at our power and say, we have 5 spots available. The first people to comment get the spot, and, we can have them, you have to comment, you have to get on and pay, and you show up here with your receipt. So there's channels that we have already in place that make it very easy to do something like that, Gary.
Okay. Yeah, I think that if you're saying on a normal year, there's no restriction, right? So you have 700 people that are using this beach, just walk right in and use it whenever. And now we're saying, no, we can only have 80. And they're paying to use it. I just see, I don't know if there's legal things behind this where someone could document, look, I could only use the beach 3 times this whole year because of the restrictions Littleton put on. It just seems like adding more people, the out of town things. And I think you're right. I like the way that you said you're going to hold off on the non-residents, because I think that might be important. We might see that. I don't see how it's going to work if we can only allow 80 on the beach at a time.
The other thing to keep in mind is Monday through Friday, normally I have to shut down half the beach for the whole day. So Camp Tehadawon can't be there. So that's normally not real estate that we have.
Yeah, that's true.
Camp is not allowed to go there this year. So we have all of that real estate full time right now. So that's also going to be, we're increasing the beach 100%. Over what we had last year.
Oh, good. Okay.
And we could also get further down the summer, depending on how things go statewide. We could get to the next phase, and we have more than 80 people there too.
So, hey, quick question for you, Tim. That having the whole beach, does that mean that you can have more than 80 people there, or is it just 80 people because you're calculating on using the whole beach?
So 80 is a super arbitrary number that was just kind of pulled out of thin air. I just want to clarify that with everybody. We were down there the other day. We were counting heads. Chris Stoddard had mentioned it the other day, based off of the guidance that you can't have more than 200 people per acre under the current guidelines. The reality is, that's just on the sand that we're talking, that 80 starts to look like it would be difficult to socially distance at 12 feet. We have the whole entire Woodlands Park where people could sit if they choose to. A lot of people come to Long Lake and they don't go in the water. There's a lot of people who don't like it because it's dark water. They just like to come and enjoy the scenery and the setting. So, yes, it's more of one of those things that it's an arbitrary number, because are they adults? Are they teenagers? Are they kids? How is everybody spreading out? And this week we were able to, mitigate that and kind of move people around as needed to fit, more people in. So to be clear, as we go through this conversation, 80, that number is just arbitrary and kind of used as like that placeholder of what we've kind of seen on the sand.
Okay, but that 80 is counting the fact that you'll have the full beach.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, great. Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments? Mr. Layton, do we have any public input?
Cindy, could I have one more comment on
Absolutely.
just the resident side of the paying? By waiting till July to decide if we're going to have to increase the fees for the summer, I think that's a good idea. Especially knowing I think it was Chase's concern where we would be able to augment individuals that couldn't pay that fee. So I think leaving that open to us is going to be an important thing based on what we look at for June numbers. But either way, I think you guys have a great plan to a situation that's really hard to plan for. So, I think a lot of work's gone into this. So thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Any other comments from board members?
Do we need to provide guidance now in terms of what that fee structure is going to be, or are we, maybe I misunderstood, are we waiting until the end of June before we start selling passes?
So my request of the boards tonight is the approval to free up funds to hire and pay for staff, and to set the rate so we can start selling passes tomorrow. I literally have to uncheck a red X on my computer right now, and people can start buying their passes, and we will start printing them tomorrow if they don't already have their cards.
So how much are you looking, when you say free up funds, Tim, what do you mean by that?
So to authorize the spending of up to the 11th, I'm sorry, I closed my PDF. Give me a second. Up to
46,000.
No, it's 11,627, I think.
For payroll for Long Lake Beach for the month of June that I spoke of.
Mm-hmm.
And then we will need money to buy cleaning supplies for the bathhouse for the month. I don't anticipate doing anything else. We have all of the other materials from previous years that we currently require. The only exception to that would be if we had to come up with some way to mark the beach. I had suggested using some sort of a webbing. I don't think that we need to do that right now. I think that there's other ways that we could do it, either with flagging tape or something else. So I'm pretty confident that, any kind of expenses would be kind of under that cleaning supply budget, and probably shouldn't exceed more than $500 to $1,000 in a month. That would be hand sanitizer, bleach, soap, and any other paper goods that are needed for the bathhouse.
I just wanted to add one other piece to that as well. So I had sent out an email as well as a PDF document that had all of the information about the possible costs or expenditures that we have from now until the end of this fiscal year, which is June 30th. That have been categorized into that COVID-19 reimbursement fund through MEMA. So there are a few items that are on there that would correlate with the beach. Tim has talked about a couple of those, the cleaning supplies, the webbing, things like that, that we may or may not purchase. The only other thing that I can think off the top of my head that I would 100% say that we need to buy would be the Seal Easies, which are the masks that each of the lifeguards should definitely have their own. So that's something, I know we would need to be able to purchase that as well.
We have enough Seal Easies and first aid stuff to get us to the fiscal year.
Okay.
Yeah, I have enough stuff for Matt. Everything. We have everything we need right there.
Yeah.
Madam Chair, if I may, just a quick follow-up for Alicia and
Sure.
Tim. Can you guys speak to the plan that you have in place to actually clean the bathhouse?
Yeah, so right now the goal is every single hour to close the bathhouse. We will be using products like Clorox Cleanup. That's what we're currently using, allowing it to sit on the sinks and urinals, the changing tables, and any other hard surfaces for a couple of minutes before rinsing said surfaces down and drying them. And then the bathrooms would be reopened. The bathrooms are currently posted with 6 feet between stakes outside. Each stake has either a sign that says one person or one household in the restroom at a time, with an alternating sign that's located on the Google Doc, if you want to look at it, that just has kind of like 6 basic beach rules to follow while you're at Long Lake Beach, including washing your hands, don't come if you're sick, all that kind of stuff. At which point, that's kind of how we would monitor the system. One of the attendants, so myself, Nat, or Matt, would be in charge of being on the boat dock side of the ramp, but they would also be the ones who are in charge of the monitoring of people leaving and going into the bathroom for that period, and then we would rotate through. So that's how we would do that.
Thanks for sharing that.
What's that?
Appreciate you sharing that, but Mike, I'm not sure we had to get it to that level of detail. We're going to keep this moving.
So basically what I'm understanding is you're asking, it's about $12,700 to hire and train staff and purchase cleaning supplies for beach operations for the month of June.
Correct, which we anticipate at least the front side of the passes being able to cover.
Right, and so in setting the pass fee starting at $60.
Correct, unless you guys want to have discussion on raising that or anything else.
Right. I guess my only concern is, due to the pandemic, so many families are already struggling financially. I would hate to see us raise the beach pass fee beyond what was charged last year, especially. I just think there's too many hardships out there right now. I'll defer to other comments from board members who may want to speak to that, but that's just my feeling.
I just think they're going to access as well. So for that purpose, I wouldn't want to raise them either.
I would just say, based on the conversations we've had with the community over the last 2 to 3 years, I think we're at our limit for how much we can charge for the beach. There may be a number of residents who frequent the beach that would be willing to pay more based on the epidemic we're in, but I think the majority of people who regularly use the beach, I think $60 is probably where we want to be.
Yeah, I would say, I'm not as stuck on the 60, and it's because it sounds like we have a plan to help individuals that are going through a difficult time. And I'm not one to raise the fees going forward every year. It's just, we are in a pandemic. It's going to cost more to go to a dentist. It's going to cost more to go to, because they have to buy certain things, which you're talking to us about. But I also realize, I think it's individuals are going to be, if you're going to the beach this summer, you're already taking on the risk that you've decided to take on. There are people I know that won't go to the beach because they're not even willing to do that. but the psychological side of this, the health side of this, to an individual to get outside and enjoy these things, everyone's going to be weighing that internally. So I think it's not a huge ask. I think you've got a plan. It sounds like at least through this summer that I think we can live with. It's just I'm looking at down the road if we have to scale staffing to numbers, be it Camp Tehadawon or something else, just to be really, really looking at that tightly if we have to scale things down because we don't have the numbers that we're expecting at any given time. But that's really all I have. This is a solid plan, and I'm comfortable probably with the 60, but I don't know. I'd be comfortable with 100, especially if I knew that we were going to assist in people that couldn't afford it in residents. So,
Madam Chair.
Certainly.
Yeah, I agree that this is all valuable discussion, but in terms of decision making, I think it's kind of beyond our scope. It's internal to the Park and Rec, some of these decisions, and they're duly elected board and their professional staff guide them. And other than the bigger questions, I appreciate getting the updates, but I think if they're looking for a blessing on the finances, then fine, let's either do it or not do it. But as far as running their operations, that's their show.
No, I agree. Certainly the operational piece of it. It was just a financing component because they were asking for assistance from the town is the reason that we're having this meeting. I think I'd like to just see if Cheryl's still on the call, since we do have a number of funding requests that they're asking for. I just don't know how that would work or what we need to do going forward.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So there's two matters here that I want to bring to the board's attention, and I just want to make sure I have the proper approval from the boards, given that we are in a situation where we froze spending. As Alicia and Tim brought up, there's some spending that needs to occur in June for the beach, which would unlikely contribute to the deficit because the revenue would offset that expenditures. There's also some expenditures that I believe Alicia sent to me to prepare for Camp T. And so I want to, before I authorize them to be able to expend those expenditures, I wanted the board to give their approval first. I believe there's some preparation and just some things that they would need to be purchasing over the next few weeks. And I don't feel comfortable at this point giving the approval for them to purchase them until the board has given that authorization, given the spending freeze that we're in.
Okay, thank you, Cheryl. So what, do you have more information about what those items are, or?
I do, or I would invite Alicia to kind of discuss this a little bit more in detail.
Yeah, so all of the information is on, so as far as Camp T goes, as far as expenditures, there's not really more as far as supplies and things like that we're going to need to buy. Everything that we would need to buy here in June would be on that PDF that I sent you for the items that were on that MEMA reimbursement sheet. So, we're looking at things like the Mr. Fogger and the disinfectant that would be able to clean the school. That's a really important piece that, we want to be able to make sure that we can sanitize to the best of our ability. We're hiring a camp nurse and a camp custodian. Again, both of those positions should be fully reimbursable by the MEMA reimbursement report, simply for the fact that we're bringing those staff on for specifically to deal with anything to prevent the spread of COVID-19 as far as camp goes. So all of those things have been reported through that with Kim. So to get approval on the things that need to yet be purchased on that list, that's what we would need to get. And also the ability to bring in the Camp Tehadawon staff and be able to train them. And keep in mind that we have, so it would be June 29th and June 30th, technically could be the first and second day of Camp T for week A. So I don't have a number for what that is right now, just because all of the guidelines came out this afternoon at 2. So we need to have a couple of days to be able to read through, digest all of that information, and come up with a set game plan. You know, the groups are 12 when we thought they were going to be 10. So, you know, do we still stick with the 2 counselors? I mean, for safety purposes, we think the answer is yes, but technically, you know, according to the Board of Health license, it's a 10-to-1 ratio of kids to staff members. So, you know, there's areas where we really, as going through professionals, have to figure out what we need to do on the safety standpoint and how we can be able to also minimize the amount of money that we're spending or expending during this process as well, and try to come to this like balance in between. So that's why I said, you know, I don't want to get into Camp T too much tonight as far as the staffing goes, because I don't have answers for you at this point in time.
So I guess that was kind of the crux of my earlier question. So those expenses are not covered under Article 13.
I think that they would be. It's one of those pieces, though, we had not budgeted to buy those items, nor to have those staff brought in. All of these things are done retroactively to deal with COVID-19. So again, like we've put in the request for reimbursement, but you know, the reality of getting that reimbursement, we won't know it till we have it. So that's a little.
So there is a chance that Camp T could start up, and you might come back to the town and say that you need more funding to help with that.
No, I don't believe that that's the case. No,
Okay.
But we would need the approval, like Cheryl had said, to be able to bring on seasonal staff and to purchase those items and prep for COVID-19 and dealing with the guidelines, because we're in that spending freeze. So we're taking it seriously. We haven't spent anything extra at all. Like we've completely shut everything down since the beginning of March.
Okay. All right. So Cheryl, just looking for some guidance from you here about what action we need to take tonight.
I think I'm just looking for the board to give either myself or Alicia the approval to expend as necessary for them to get Camp T up and running.
So moved.
With a not to exceed number. I mean, we have to have something in there, right?
Right.
We're talking about the lake as well, though. So that was one of the reasons why we're here tonight. So I think
we're talking that much. I know we're talking. Let's do something.
Well, Paul, I mean, $11,700 of taxpayers' money that they're not used to. I mean, we had to talk it out. But that part,
it's at a level of detail we don't generally get into those kind of expenses. I get the whatever. If people find value and all that. I guess it's worth it, but I think I got the point what they're looking for a while ago, and they'll be back to talk to us again.
Right. That's why I think we should just right now. I wanted at least the FinCom side just to vote on the lake piece, because I know we're going to be meeting again on the other picture, which is probably towards the end of the month. Right.
Harry, before FinCom takes up the lake piece, can we discuss briefly? I think everybody's expressed general support for the idea of making sure that there are resources available for people who need support with lake passes, but we haven't put a number to that or really talked around that, except that people are generally supportive. Where that money comes from, how much we would be comfortable putting into that fund, I think are an important part of that lake discussion. And I would suggest, per Tim, in past years, it's been 10 to 15 residents. I think if we plan on tripling that right now, then we're in the right ballpark, and it's not a big chunk of money if we assume it's 35 people or something like that. And then if we need more, then we can take on more later, but that gets us started.
Chase, just along those lines, Chase, because I don't know if it would take a vote too, is there anything that we can put in place that if another resident wants to make a donation specifically for helping with that, if they want to kind of pay it forward to another resident, if they have funds, is there something that we would have to do to put that in place? Or could we put that in place that they could donate to the scholarship fund for Long Lake Beach passes?
I don't know what the mechanism would be. I guess I would leave that to Parks and Rec and the Finance Department to sort it out, but I'm more than supportive of some mechanism.
Right. Yep. So based on the numbers, the initial number of $12,700, and then to Chase's comment right there, to offer assistance for residents who are unable to pay the pass, based on figures from years past, that would be another $2,100. So we're looking at $14,800.
Go up 15.
Just go
Madam Chair, if I could, do we
Sure.
know how those were funded in the past, the ones that we subsidized?
Tim
Yes, you-
does.
I just muted myself. Sorry about that.
Okay.
So we do have a scholarship fund. The funds have been they're pretty low at this point in time, and typically those funds would go towards Camp Tehadawon, weeks towards Camp Tehadawon for families, or swimming lessons. That's kind of what we focused on. But if we've had families in the past that have had hardships for the actual beach passes, we would take it out of those scholarship funds in the past. Yep.
Okay. And what's the balance in that fund right now, Alicia?
I don't remember off the top of my head, but I think it's somewhere around like 2,000 or 3,000. I can get back to you on that one.
Okay. All right. Any other questions or comments from the board?
Madam Chair, if I could, just based off of those numbers, do we need to fund additional stickers at this point? I mean, they have the money. If they find that they're getting inundated with requests due to hardship, they can cover 35 easily, and then they need more money. We can always have a discussion about that later.
True.
I think we're ready to take up a vote on the 15,000. We want to make it an even number, correct?
Correct. I mean, I appreciate your point, Mr. Chamney, but I know what you're saying, but at this point, we've, I think we've pretty much covered this topic. So, I mean, I'm ready to move forward with the $15,000 figure. Is there any other comments from any other members of the board? Okay. Do we have we need a motion, or what should we do?
Yeah, I'll do the FinCom one. If I could have a motion to support the Park and Rec's Enterprise Fund for the remainder of the fiscal year with $12,700 for Camp Tehadawon and another $2,300 for the scholarship fund, I guess it would be, correct? So,
Right. Was it 12,700 for the beach? Wasn't that for beach operations?
Yep.
Okay.
I need a motion from someone on FinCom.
So moved.
It's been moved. Could I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Tom. Do a roll call vote. Mr. Champney.
Yes.
Mr. Bell. Could you unmute, please? I can mouth read, but I lip read. I'll come back. There you go.
Alan Bell's a yes.
Thank you. Betsy.
Betsy's yes.
Thank you. Where am I? Who do I have left here? Who am I forgetting?
Burrell.
Tom, right there, the big guy.
Yes.
Thank you. And I'm a yes as well. So it is unanimous. Thank you, guys.
Excellent. Thank you, Gary. All right, so do we need a motion from the Board of Selectmen on this?
Do we? I don't know. Cheryl, is there a reason?
I
we
don't
would
see
need
a
to?
drawback. I think it would be beneficial, just so it's crystal clear that the boards both supported it.
Okay, then I'll move the same motion Gary made.
Second.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. Roll call vote. Mr. DeCoste?
Chuck's and I.
Mr. Glavy?
Aye.
Mr. Knox?
Aye.
Mr. Gerbig?
Yes.
And Cindy Napoli is aye. Excellent. Great. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, guys. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't mean to add like one more thing in there, but I just wanted to check and see about the COVID-19. If you guys are okay with us moving forward with that ideally would either be reimbursed or paid through the amount that's going to be in Article 13. But we need the approval to go ahead and purchase some of those items for Camp T.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see any problem with it at this point. I mean, you need them to purchase them for Camp T.
Yeah.
So
Similar amount to what you had discussed for the beach.
We'll tell you the exact amount. Hold on one moment, sir. Cindy said that. There we go. All right. So the amount that we have yet to get, it's 11,400. Yep.
And that's to get.
It's going to be the cleaning supplies, the Mr. Fogger, the disinfectant, infrared thermometers. We have to get porta potty rentals. There's tent rentals.
and so you just need our approval to purchase those items in light of the spending freeze.
Yes, please.
Okay.
So moved.
That's a selectman vote.
Yeah.
So moved.
Do you have a second?
Hold on,
sorry,
before we
Chuck.
second, just relative to the fogger, don't we have a fogger?
So it seems like the school department via now the fire department has an electrostatic disinfectant sprayer. But it's something that we are going to use every single day, if not multiple times a day. And it's something that as we move into the future of when we have our RISE program that's in town hall, when the school year hopefully starts back up, that we'll have it to be able to disinfect that space as well in the future. So it is a little bit of a purchase now, but it's something that, we are planning to implement as we move forward as part of our process for all of our programs.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, great. So any further discussion or comments? So we have a motion that's been made and seconded. All those in favor, roll call vote. Mr. Knox? Mr. DeCoste?
Sure.
Mr. Glavy?
Aye.
Mr. Gerbig?
Aye.
And Cindy Napoli is aye. Excellent. All right, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
so
you to both
much.
boards.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, so Board of Selectmen, we are now, we've already discussed and approved our minutes. We're now going to enter into executive session. If I can have a motion, please.
And I would just suggest inserting the words "to return to open session only for the purpose of scheduling a soil removal hearing for the 9 Ayer Road soil removal permit application" at the bottom of what's written.
10B.
Yeah. It's on there, right? So it's you want me to essentially as written?
It's in the packet. Unfortunately, it's not in the presentation.
Okay, great. Then I'll move that the Board of Selectmen vote pursuant to MGL Chapter 30A, Section 21, subsection A2, to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel or contract negotiations with non-union personnel if an open meeting law may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the public body and the chair so declares. B3, to discuss strategy with respect to litigation and potential litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the litigating position of the public body and the chair so declares, and to return to open session only the purpose of scheduling a soil removal hearing for the 9 Air Road soil removal permit application.
Second.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. Roll call vote. Mr. Knox? Mr. Glavy?
Aye.
Mr. Gerbig?
Aye.
Mr. DeCoste?
Aye.
And Cindy Napoli is aye. We will be logging off, residents, and entering into executive session, and we will be coming out of that session shortly and concluding our meeting for this evening. Thank you.
How does that all go down, Cindy, before you?
I was just about to message, I was just messaging Joe, but I may as well announce it. Judy, I assume you'll be hanging on and until we return to open session, for the good or for the bad, so that you can maintain that the board's in executive session. And
Yes.
thanks for hanging in there with us.
How do we make sure our dialogue on the other screen on the same computer doesn't become verbally communicated?
I'm going to leave this meeting and join the other one, Paul.
Yes,
I would recommend.
leave this one and log into the other one.
All right,
And then
well,
we would
this
come-
meeting will still be open to rejoin later. Is that the point?
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
See you on the other side. Now, and so I would, through you, Madam Chair, I would defer to her.
Authorization, we have a, do we have a motion with that, Nina?
Yes.
Subsidized housing inventory and affordable unit report.
Fiscal year 20 expenses related to COVID-19 under the Cares Act.
For the services provided. Okay, so the next agenda item is continued discussions.
Madam Chair, sorry, for emergency responders and furloughed employees.
Correct.
Yeah.
No, not
Like I said,
necessary.
I gave you guys a bunch of emails.
At the Pepperell Hydroelectric Power Station, late this day, the Light and Water Department regarding their PFAS forum.
Absolutely, thank you.
The notice provided by the Light and Water Department regarding their PFAS forum. I am at the Pepperell Hydroelectric Power Station. We hope the community will join the LELWD to hear.
It
I'm
doesn't
happy to
matter to
defer to
me.
however you'd like to do it.
Okay, sure. Congratulations. Any other board members?
Interacts, and I couldn't be more pleased and happy with.
Does any members of the board have any comments or questions? Joe or not?
Sure. But I don't know if the police chief has anything he would like to update the board on at this point.
On the call, Nina or Joe or not?
Sure.
That's wonderful. And thank you, Cheryl, for
I move the Board of Selectmen vote to submit
a matter that's going to come before the board. We have been, there's a renewed staff members present who would like to give us an update.
I know that no problem. I know that you had asked for some discussion. I don't.
Seems like a reasonable.